The fluorescent lights of Harbor General's emergency room cast harsh shadows across the linoleum floor as four security guards struggled to restrain what everyone assumed was just another homeless drunk. But when the largest guard reached for the man's arm, something happened that made every person in that ER freeze. The vagrant moved with terrifying precision, twisting the guard's wrist at an angle that sent him crashing into a medical cart with a scream that echoed off the sterile walls. This wasn't a random street person. This was someone trained to kill. And the only thing standing between him and complete chaos was a young nurse who just recognized a tattoo that would change everything, a mark she'd seen only once before, on her father's arm the day before he died. Before we dive into this incredible story, I need you to do me a favor. Stay with me until the very end, because what happens next will blow your mind. If you love stories about hidden heroes and justice finally served, hit that like button and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to see just how far this story travels. Now, let's get back to that night, the night everything changed. The double doors of Harbor General's emergency room burst open at 11:47 p.m., admitting a gust of October rain and the acrid smell of the streets. Two paramedics wheeled in a gurney bearing a man who looked like he'd been assembled from spare parts and bad decisions. His beard was matted with substances best left unidentified. His clothes were layers of donated failures, and his eyes, those eyes held something the intake nurse, Maya Chen, couldn't quite place. John Doe, approximately 50 to 60 years old, the lead paramedic rattled off while shoving paperwork at Maya. Found unresponsive near the waterfront, possible overdose, possible exposure. Vitals are stable now, but he was hypothermic when we found him. Refused transport initially, then collapsed. Maya took the clipboard, her practiced gaze sweeping over the man. She'd been an ER nurse at Harbor General for 3 years, long enough to recognize the usual Friday night parade of humanity's rough edges, but not long enough for it to have completely hardened her. At 28, she was often the youngest nurse on shift, frequently dismissed by the older staff, and almost universally ignored by the doctors who saw her as little more than a glorified assistant. Bay 3! Barked charge nurse Patricia Winters from across the nurses' station, not bothering to look up from her computer. And make it quick, we've got a VIP coming in 30 minutes. Maya's jaw tightened, but she said nothing. She'd learned that lesson the hard way. 6 months ago, she'd questioned Dr. Marcus Aldridge's diagnosis of a hysterical teenager, insisting the girl's abdominal pain was more than anxiety. Aldridge had dismissed her in front of the entire staff, made a formal complaint about her overstepping, and nearly got her fired. The teenager had been readmitted 3 days later with a ruptured appendix. She guided the gurney toward Bay 3, one of the smaller treatment areas usually reserved for minor injuries or patients who were essentially just sleeping off whatever they'd consumed. The paramedics transferred the man with practiced efficiency, and Maya began her assessment. Up close, the contradictions multiplied. Yes, his clothes were filthy, and his smell suggested weeks on the street, but his hands— She paused, studying them under the bright examination light. These weren't the hands of a long-term addict. No track marks, no telltale scarring. The calluses were wrong too, positioned in places that spoke of gripping things harder and more purposeful than a bottle or a pipe. "Sir, can you hear me?" Maya kept her voice gentle, professional. "You're in Harbor General Hospital. We're going to help you." The man's eyes snapped open with a suddenness that made her step back. They were gray, clear despite his condition, and they tracked her movement with an intensity that sent a chill down her spine. This was not the unfocused gaze of someone emerging from a drug haze. "No needles." His voice was gravel scraping across broken glass. "No sedatives, no sleep." "Sir, we need to run some tests." Did I stutter? He tried to sit up, and Maya instinctively placed a hand on his shoulder. The muscles beneath were solid, the kind of solid that came from discipline, not the wasted frame she'd expected. "I said no needles." Before Maya could respond, Patricia appeared at the curtain with a scowl that could curdle milk. "Problem here?" "Patient is refusing treatment," Maya said carefully. Patricia's eyes narrowed as she took in the man. "Then get him out. We need this bed." "He was hypothermic, Patricia. We can't just discharge him without—" "We can, and we will." Patricia's voice dropped to a hiss. "Do you have any idea who's coming in?" "Harrison Whitmore. The Harrison Whitmore. Board of Directors. Major donor. He had a minor skiing accident and wants to be seen here because his daughter's wedding is tomorrow, and he trusts Dr. Aldridge. We are not going to tell a man who donated a wing to this hospital that we don't have a bed because we're warehousing vagrants. Maya felt heat rising in her chest. This man needs medical attention. This man needs a shower and a sandwich, not a $100,000 workup that he'll never pay for. Patricia jabbed a finger toward the man. Get him stable enough to walk and get him out. As Patricia stalked away, Maya turned back to her patient and found him watching the exchange with an expression she couldn't read. Anger? Amusement? Something else entirely? Sounds like I'm not welcome, he said. You're not well, that's all that matters. Maya checked his blood pressure manually, noting the reading was better than expected. What's your name? Real name? Does it matter? It does to me. He studied her for a long moment. Marcus. Marcus what? Just Marcus. Maya made a note on the chart, then paused as she reached for his arm to check for a pulse point. There, barely visible beneath the grime, was a tattoo. Faded black ink, partially obscured, but she could make out what looked like a mountain with something written beneath it. The style was military. She'd seen enough of them on her father's old unit photos to recognize the aesthetic. Her father. The thought brought the familiar ache, the one that never quite went away, even 5 years after his death. Thomas Chen had been Army, a medic who'd served in places he never talked about, doing things he never described. He died of a heart attack at 53, buried with minimal fanfare because, according to the Army, he'd been nothing more than a supply clerk. She'd known better. The scars on his hands, the nightmares that woke him screaming, the coded conversations with old friends who visited in the middle of the night, those weren't the hallmarks of a man who'd spent his service pushing papers. You served, Maya said quietly, not quite a question. Marcus's expression shuddered. Long time ago. Before she could press further, voices rose from the main ER entrance. Maya recognized Dr. Marcus Aldridge's smooth baritone, the one he used when he wanted everyone to know he was the smartest person in the room, which was, in his opinion, always. Absolutely unacceptable that I wasn't called immediately, Aldridge was saying as he swept into the ER, white coat billowing behind him like a cape. At 45, he was handsome in the way of men who'd never been told no, with silver threading his dark hair in a way that somehow made him look distinguished rather than old. Where's Mr. Whitmore? He's not here yet, Doctor, Patricia said, appearing with the speed of someone who'd been lying in wait. But we've cleared Bay 3 as requested. Aldridge's gaze swung toward Maya's station, and his expression darkened when he saw Marcus still occupying the bed. I thought I was clear. That bed needs to be available. Patient was hypothermic and, Maya began, and is now stable and can be discharged. Aldridge didn't even look at Marcus as he spoke, addressing his words to Patricia. Get him out, now. Something in Maya snapped. Maybe it was the casual cruelty. Maybe it was the memory of her father being dismissed and forgotten. Maybe it was 3 years of being treated like she was invisible. He needs at least another hour of monitoring. His core temperature was, Are you a doctor now, Nurse Chen? Aldridge's voice could have etched glass. Did you go to medical school when I wasn't looking? The ER went quiet. Other nurses suddenly found their computer screens fascinating. A resident who'd been charting nearby edged away like she was trying to become one with the wall. No, but I am a trained emergency nurse, and this patient is a liability. Aldridge finally turned to look at Marcus, and the disgust on his face was naked. He's probably got a communicable disease. He's taking up space we need for actual patients, and frankly, he smells. Security! 2 guards materialized from their station near the entrance. Maya recognized them. Jeff and Danny, both decent guys who'd probably rather be anywhere else. Gentleman needs to leave, Aldridge said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Please escort him out. Wait! Maya stepped between the guards and the bed, knowing it was futile but unable to stop herself. Just give me 30 minutes. If he's stable, I'll discharge him myself. Step aside, Nurse Chen, or I'll have you removed as well. Marcus had been silent through the exchange, but now he spoke, his voice carrying a weight that made everyone pause. The lady's just doing her job. The lady needs to remember what her job is, Aldridge shot back. Now get out of my ER before I have you arrested for trespassing. Jeff reached for Marcus's arm, and what happened next unfolded in less than 3 seconds, but would replay in Maya's mind for weeks. Marcus didn't punch, didn't flail. He simply moved. His hand came up and caught Jeff's wrist, redirecting his momentum with precise economy. Jeff, unprepared for resistance from what he'd assumed was a weakened homeless man, stumbled forward. Marcus was already sliding off the bed, his movements controlled despite the IV line still trailing from his arm. "Sir, please don't," Danny started, reaching for his radio. Marcus's other hand flashed out, not striking but pressing against a pressure point on Danny's shoulder that made the guard's arm go instantly numb. The radio clattered to the floor. The entire ER froze. This wasn't the flailing of a drunk or the wild desperation of someone high. This was training. This was someone who knew exactly how much force to apply and where. "I'll leave," Marcus said, his voice level. "But I walk out on my own." Aldridge had gone pale, then red. "You just assaulted 2 security officers. I'm calling the police." "He didn't hurt them," Maya heard herself say, though her heart was hammering. "He just what? Demonstrated combat training? Proved he's dangerous?" Aldridge was already pulling out his phone. "That's even worse. We have patients here, families, children." More security guards were arriving now, drawn by the commotion. Marcus backed toward the corner of the bay, his hands raised in a gesture that was somehow both placating and ready. Maya could see it in his stance. He wasn't going to attack, but he wasn't going to be manhandled either. "Everyone stay calm," she tried, knowing how useless the words were even as she spoke them. "Ma'am, you need to step back." The head of security, a former cop named Sullivan, had arrived. Unlike the younger guards, he recognized what he was seeing. His hand stayed near his taser, but didn't draw it. "Sir, we don't want trouble. Just come with us quietly. No restraints." Marcus's voice had gone flat, emotionless. "No closed spaces." Sullivan exchanged a glance with Maya that said he understood they were dealing with something, someone, well above his pay grade. "Can't promise that, sir. You just put hands on my men." "They put hands on me first, sir." The situation might have de-escalated there. Sullivan was smart enough to recognize PTSD when he saw it, experienced enough to know that sometimes you talked instead of tackled. But Harrison Whitmore chose that moment to arrive. The hospital board member swept through the ER entrance with the confidence of someone who'd never been denied anything. He was 60, fit in the way of men with personal trainers, and his minor skiing accident appeared to be a bandage on his forehead that could have been applied by a drugstore first aid kit. "What the hell is going on?" Whitmore's voice boomed across the ER. "Marcus, I was told you'd have a room ready." Aldridge turned, his expression transforming from angry to obsequious in a heartbeat. "Mr. Whitmore, so sorry for the delay. We're just dealing with a small security incident." "A security incident? In the ER?" Whitmore's gaze landed on Marcus, still backed into the corner of Bay 3, and his face twisted with contempt. "This is unacceptable. I donate millions to this hospital, and I have to wait while you deal with trash?" The word hung in the air like poison. Maya saw Marcus's jaw tighten, saw something flicker behind his eyes that made her think of her father in the weeks before he died. That look of someone who'd given everything and been told it meant nothing. "Mr. Whitmore, I assure you this is being handled," Aldridge began. "It better be. I want him out. Now. And I want to know why he was in here in the first place." "Hospital policy requires us to treat anyone who," Maya started, but Whitmore cut her off with a dismissive wave. "Hospital policy? I make hospital policy. I'm on the board of directors, and I'm telling you that we don't have the resources to waste on people who contribute nothing." "Sir, he's a human being who needed help," Maya said, knowing she should stop, unable to help herself. Whitmore looked at her for the first time, really looked at her, and the calculation in his eyes made her feel like a bug under glass. "You're that nurse, the one who questioned Marcus last year, caused all that trouble over nothing. The patient had appendicitis. The patient was fine until you interfered. Marcus, who is this woman and why is she still employed here?" Aldridge's smile was pure venom. "An excellent question, Mr. Whitmore. Nurse Chen seems to have difficulty understanding the chain of command. Maya felt the walls closing in. She'd gone too far, said too much, and now she was going to lose everything over a patient whose name she didn't even know. Then Marcus moved. Not toward anyone, not threateningly, but he shifted his weight in a way that drew every eye in the room. When he spoke, his voice carried an authority that made even Whitmore pause. You want to know who contributes nothing? Marcus looked at each of them in turn. Aldridge, Whitmore, the security guards. I've seen men give everything. I've held brothers while they bled out in the dirt. I've carried bodies home to mothers who'd never be whole again. And those men? They didn't die so you could decide who deserves help based on how much money they have. Security, Whitmore started. I'm leaving. Marcus yanked the IV from his arm with practiced efficiency, ignoring the blood that welled up. But you should know, that woman there? He nodded at Maya. She's the only one in this place who acts like she remembers what it means to care about people. Whatever happens to her because of me, that's on you. And that's something you're going to have to live with. He started toward the exit, the security guards parting instinctively, but Maya saw what others missed. The slight sway in his step, the way his hand went to his chest. Something was wrong. Wait! She started forward, medical training overriding self-preservation. Marcus took 3 more steps before his knees buckled. Maya was moving before he hit the ground, catching him badly, but enough to keep his head from cracking against the linoleum. His skin was cold, too cold, and when she pressed her fingers to his neck, his pulse was thready and irregular. Get a crash cart, she yelled. He's going into shock. For a second, nobody moved. Aldridge stood frozen. Whitmore looked horrified for all the wrong reasons, and the security guards seemed unsure whether they should be helping or continuing to treat Marcus as a threat. Then training kicked in. A resident rushed over with the crash cart, another nurse appeared with monitors, and Maya found herself running a code on the dirty floor of Bay 3 while everyone watched. V-fib, someone called out as the monitor started showing the telltale pattern. Maya positioned the defibrillator paddles, her hands steady even as her mind raced. Clear! Marcus's body arced with the shock, then fell back. The monitor showed a brief normal rhythm, then deteriorated again. Again, clear! This time the rhythm held, but his blood pressure was still dropping. Maya rattled off orders for medications, fluids, warming blankets, all while acutely aware that she was making treatment decisions that were technically Dr. Aldridge's to make. What do you think you're doing? Aldridge had found his voice, and it was shaking with rage. I'm the attending here. Then attend! Maya snapped, too focused on keeping Marcus alive to care about consequences. He needs pressors, he needs a central line, and he needs to be in the ICU. He needs to be... Whatever Aldridge was about to say was cut off by the flat-line screech of the monitor. Marcus was in a systole, no heartbeat at all. Maya started CPR, counting compressions while another nurse bagged him. 30 compressions, 2 breaths, over and over while the seconds ticked past. At 2 minutes, she paused to check the rhythm. Still nothing. Epinephrine, she barked. The resident fumbled with the drug cart, and Maya saw Aldridge just standing there, watching, his face unreadable. Whitmore had backed away, looking vaguely sick. Now! Maya resumed compressions, feeling a rib crack under her hands, but not stopping. In CPR, broken ribs meant you were doing it right. The epinephrine went in. Maya continued compressions. 4 minutes. 5. Her arms were burning, but she didn't stop. Maybe we should call it, the resident said quietly. He's been down for... No. Maya switched to one-handed compressions long enough to wipe sweat from her eyes. Not yet. Nurse Chen? Aldridge started. Shut up! The words were out before she could stop them, and the entire ER went silent except for the sound of her compressions and the monitor's steady shriek. Just shut up and let me work! Another minute. Then another. Her arms were shaking now, her count getting harder to maintain. The resident put a hand on her shoulder, gentle, trying to tell her it was over. Maya pushed harder, faster, thinking of her father, of all the soldiers who'd died alone and forgotten, of every person who'd been deemed not worth the effort. And then, a beep. Faint, but there. Then another. The monitor showed a rhythm, weak, irregular, but a rhythm. Maya sagged back on her heels, gasping for air, as the team swarmed in to stabilize Marcus. An ICU resident she didn't recognize took over, snapping orders with efficiency that suggested they actually knew what they were doing. For a moment, the only sound was medical equipment and rapid-fire medical terminology. Then Aldridge's voice cut through, cold and precise. "Nurse Chen, you're suspended effective immediately." Maya looked up at him, still on her knees on the bloody floor, too exhausted to even process the words. "You countermanded my orders, you verbally abused an attending physician, and you created a scene in front of a board member." Aldridge's voice was almost gleeful. "Give your badge to security and leave the premises. We'll contact you about a disciplinary hearing." "She saved his life," the resident said quietly, but Aldridge silenced him with a look. "She violated protocol and created a liability. Mr. Whitmore, I apologize that you had to witness this unprofessional—" "He's seizing!" someone shouted. Marcus's body went rigid on the floor, his back arching as the seizure took hold. The ICU team moved quickly, administering anti-seizure medication and preparing to intubate. Maya watched, numb, as they worked. She should move, should leave like she'd been told, but her legs wouldn't cooperate. Then she saw it. As they cut away Marcus's filthy jacket to place monitor leads, the tattoo on his arm was fully revealed. A mountain, stark and simple, with words beneath it in precise military lettering, "Silent Sentinel." And below that, partially obscured by scarring, a number sequence that made Maya's blood run cold. She'd seen that exact tattoo before, in a box of her father's effects, in a photo of him with his unit. They were all wearing civilian clothes in the picture, standing in front of a building with no windows, and every one of them had that same mountain tattoo. Her father had made her promise never to mention the photo, never to ask about it. "Some things are classified," he'd said. "Some people don't exist on paper, and that's how it has to stay." The seizure was subsiding. The team had Marcus stabilized enough to move him to the ICU. As they wheeled him past, Maya saw his eyes flutter open for just a second, saw them focus on her with terrible clarity. "The shadow passes," he whispered, so quietly she almost missed it. Maya's heart stopped. Those words. Her father used to say them, always when he was having a particularly bad night, always when the nightmares were worst. She'd asked what they meant once, and he'd gone pale, told her to forget she'd ever heard them. But she hadn't forgotten. And now, impossibly, a homeless man who moved like a soldier and had the same classified tattoo as her father had just said the same phrase. "Nurse Chen." Sullivan was there with another security guard. "I need your badge." Maya fumbled with the ID clipped to her scrubs, her hands shaking for the first time since the code had started. She handed it over, watching as they logged it, made her sign a form, treated her like a problem to be processed. As she walked toward the exit, she passed Whitmore and Aldridge having a quiet conversation. She caught fragments. Liability issue resolved. Homeless, probably no next of kin. Quietly transfer him out. Maya's hands clenched into fists, but what could she do? She was nobody, a suspended nurse who'd just torched her career for a man she didn't know. But she did know something. She knew that tattoo. She knew those words. And she knew with absolute certainty that Marcus was not what he appeared to be. The night air hit her face as she exited through the ambulance bay, cold and shocking after the sterile warmth of the ER. Maya stood there for a long moment, trying to process everything that had just happened. Her phone buzzed. A text from Patricia. "Don't bother coming to the hearing. You're done." Maya should have felt devastated. She should have been panicking about bills, about her career, about her future. Instead, all she could think about was her father's face when he'd shown her that photo, the way his hands had shaken as he'd made her promise. "Some people don't exist on paper," he'd said. Maya pulled out her phone and called the one person who might have answers, her father's old friend, Lieutenant Colonel James Morrison, retired. She hadn't spoken to him since her father's funeral, but he'd told her then, "If you ever need anything at all, you call me." The phone rang 4 times before a gravelly voice answered. "Morrison." "Colonel Morrison, this is Maya Chen, Thomas Chen's daughter." A pause. "Maya, it's been a long time. What's wrong?" "I need to know about Silent Sentinel." The silence on the other end was deafening. When Morrison spoke again, his voice had changed, become careful. "Where did you hear that name?" I just saved a man's life. He has the tattoo. He said the phrase. What phrase? The shadow passes. Morrison's breath caught. Maya, where are you right now? Outside Harbor General. They just suspended me for treating him. They want him gone. Listen to me very carefully, Morrison said, and there was an urgency in his voice that made Maya's skin prickle. Do not let them move that man. Do not let him out of that hospital. Whatever it takes, you keep him there until I arrive. I don't work there anymore. I don't care if you have to barricade the ICU. That man, whoever he is, if he has that tattoo and he said those words, then he's one of yours. He's one of your father's. And if they move him, if they make him disappear, we might never find him again. Who is he? I don't know, but I'm going to find out. How long ago did you say those words to him? I didn't. He said them to me. Another long silence. Maya, your father and I served with 12 men who had that tattoo. Every single one of them is officially dead or never existed in the first place. If this man has it, if he knows the code phrase, then he's been running for a very long time. And now he's stopped running. Why? That's what I'm going to find out. I'll be there in 2 hours. Until then, you don't let him out of your sight. The call ended, leaving Maya standing in the cold night with more questions than answers. She looked back at the hospital, at the bright lights of the ER where she'd just lost everything. Then she thought of the way Marcus had looked at her, the way he'd moved, the way he'd spoken about brothers bleeding out in the dirt. Her father had bled out in the dirt too, in places the government said he'd never been, and they'd sent him home in a box with a flag and a story that was only half true. Maya Chen had spent 3 years being told she was wrong, being told to be quiet, being told she didn't matter. But her father had taught her something else. He'd taught her that sometimes the most important thing you could do was stand up for someone who couldn't stand up for themselves. She walked back toward the hospital entrance, knowing she was probably about to make everything worse, knowing she didn't care. Because somewhere in that ICU was a man with her father's tattoo and her father's code phrase. A man the hospital wanted to sweep under the rug like he was nothing. And Maya Chen was done letting people disappear. She badged in, realized she didn't have her badge anymore. But the security guard at the entrance was young, new, and when she walked past with the confidence of someone who belonged, he didn't stop her. The ICU was on the 4th floor. Maya took the stairs, her mind racing. What was she going to do? She had no authority, no access, and if they caught her up there... The stairwell door opened onto the ICU floor just as the elevator dinged. Maya ducked behind a linen cart as she heard Aldridge's voice. Completely stable, ready for transfer. I've arranged for a bed at County General. Their charity ward can deal with him. Excellent. Whitmore sounded pleased. And the nurse? Being handled. She won't be a problem. They walked past Maya's hiding spot, heading toward the ICU. She waited until they were inside, then crept closer, staying in the shadows. Through the window she could see Marcus. Intubated, sedated, monitors beeping steadily. He looked small in the hospital bed, diminished in a way that didn't match the dangerous precision she'd seen earlier. Aldridge was talking to the ICU attending, gesturing at charts. The attending looked uncomfortable, but was nodding along. Maya's phone buzzed. A text from Morrison. 20 minutes out. Status? She typed quickly. They're transferring him. County General. The response was immediate. Stall them. Any way you can. Maya stared at the phone. Stall them how? She was suspended, trespassing, and completely out of options. Then she remembered something her father used to say. When you're outgunned and outmaneuvered, you don't fight fair, you fight smart. Maya pulled out her phone and started recording video as she walked into the ICU. Dr. Aldridge, she called out, her voice steady despite her racing heart. I'm documenting this transfer for quality assurance purposes. Aldridge spun around, his face going purple. You're not supposed to be here. Security! I'm exercising my right as a healthcare professional to document concerning medical decisions. Maya kept the phone aimed at him. Can you please explain why you're transferring a patient who coded less than an hour ago? Turn that off right now. Is it because he's homeless? Is that the medical justification? The ICU attending stepped forward. Nurse Chen, this really isn't appropriate. What's not appropriate is transferring an unstable patient to a facility without the resources to care for him. Maya was making it up as she went, but the words sounded right. What's not appropriate is denying care based on someone's economic status. That's not what's happening here, Aldridge said, but his eyes flicked to Whitmore, and Maya knew she'd hit a nerve. Then what is happening? Because from where I stand, it looks like you're dumping a patient to make room for a VIP. How dare you? The elevator dinged. Heavy boots echoed down the hallway, military, precise. Maya's heart leaped. Morrison was early, but it wasn't Morrison who stepped into the ICU. It was 6 men in dark suits, led by a woman with steel gray hair and eyes that could cut glass. They moved with the same controlled precision as Marcus, and every single one of them had an earpiece. The woman pulled out a badge. Department of Defense Special Investigations Unit. This floor is now under federal jurisdiction. Everyone out except essential medical personnel. Aldridge's mouth opened and closed like a fish. This is a civilian hospital. You can't just... We can, and we are. The woman's gaze swept the room and landed on Marcus's bed. Something flickered across her face. Recognition? Relief? That patient is a matter of national security. Where's the attending physician responsible for his care? The ICU attending raised a shaky hand. That would be me, ma'am. Good, you stay. Everyone else, out, now. This is outrageous, Whitmore sputtered. I'm on the board of directors. One of the suited men stepped forward, and Whitmore's voice died. The man didn't touch him, didn't threaten, just stood there radiating the kind of danger that made smart people back down. Whitmore backed down. As the ICU began to clear, the woman's eyes found Maya. You, the one with the phone. You're Maya Chen? Maya's throat went dry. Yes, ma'am. You're the one who kept him alive? Yes. The woman studied her for a long moment, and Maya had the distinct impression she was being assessed by someone who could read lies in the set of your shoulders and fear in the pace of your breathing. Come with me, the woman said finally. We need to talk. As Maya followed her into a private consultation room, she caught a glimpse of Aldridge's face. The smug superiority was gone, replaced by something that looked suspiciously like fear. Good, Maya thought. Let him be scared for once. The woman closed the door and gestured for Maya to sit. She didn't introduce herself, didn't offer pleasantries, just fixed Maya with those cutting eyes and asked, How did you know? Know what? Don't play games. You recognize something about that man. What was it? Maya's hand went instinctively to her pocket, where she kept the one photo of her father's unit that she'd secretly kept. His tattoo, the phrase he said. My father, Thomas Chen, Sergeant First Class, Army Special Operations. The woman's voice softened just slightly. Silent Sentinel. Maya's eyes stung. The Army said he was a supply clerk. The Army says a lot of things. Your father saved 16 lives in a situation that officially never happened. He died a hero, even if they couldn't tell you that. And Marcus? The woman hesitated, seemed to weigh how much to say. His name isn't Marcus, it's Colonel Daniel Reeves. He's been missing for 7 months. There are people who've been looking very hard for him, and there are other people who've been looking even harder to make sure he stayed missing. Why? Because Colonel Reeves knows things, did things, in places and ways that can't ever see daylight. The woman leaned forward. Your father was part of Silent Sentinel. It was a black operations unit that handled situations conventional forces couldn't touch. Officially, it never existed. Officially, everyone in it is either dead or was never real in the first place. But they were real. They were. They are. And every single one of them made sacrifices that will never be acknowledged. The woman's expression hardened. But someone's been making them pay for those sacrifices. 3 members of Silent Sentinel have died in the past year. All of them ruled accidents or suicides, all of them suspicious as hell. Maya's blood ran cold. My father? Was probably the first. We just didn't know to look until the others started dying. The room spun. Maya gripped the edge of the table. Someone killed my father? We don't know, but we're going to find out. The woman stood. Which is why I need you to understand something very clearly. The people who want Colonel Reeves gone, whoever they are, they're connected, powerful, and they don't care who gets hurt. You saved his life tonight, which means you're now a loose end. Are you threatening me? I'm protecting you. As of right now, you're under federal protection whether you want it or not. You don't go home, you don't contact friends or family, and you definitely don't talk to the media about any of this. I lost my job. I have bills, a life. You'll have a job when this is over. A better one, if you want it. But right now, your life is worth exactly as much as it takes to keep Colonel Reeves's secrets buried. The woman's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, and her expression shifted. We have a problem. What kind of problem? The kind where someone just leaked to the media that Harbor General is harboring a dangerous vagrant who assaulted security guards. The kind where a mob of concerned citizens is forming outside. The kind where someone wants chaos so they can move Colonel Reeves without anyone noticing. Maya stood up fast enough to make the chair scrape. Then we don't let them. You're a civilian nurse who knows this hospital better than anyone in this room? Who knows which hallways have cameras and which don't, which staff members gossip and which keep secrets, and how to move a patient without anyone noticing? Maya met the woman's eyes. You need me. A smile ghosted across the woman's face. Your father would have said the same thing, stubborn as hell and twice as brave. She pulled out her phone. Fine. But you follow my orders exactly. No improvisation, no heroics. Understood? Understood. Good. Because in about 30 seconds, this hospital is going to become a war zone. And you and I are going to make sure Colonel Daniel Reeves survives to see morning. Outside, through the window, Maya could see lights. Dozens of them. Maybe hundreds. Cars, cameras, people with signs. The crowd was growing. And somewhere in that crowd, she knew, were the people who'd killed her father, the people who wanted Daniel Reeves dead, but they were going to have to go through her first. The woman's name was Colonel Sarah Vance, and she moved through the hospital like someone who'd spent her life turning chaos into strategy. Maya followed her back into the ICU, where the medical team was still working to stabilize Daniel Reeves. His vitals had improved, but he remained unconscious, the ventilator breathing for him in steady mechanical rhythm. How long until he can be moved? Vance asked the ICU attending, who looked like he wanted to be anywhere else. He's not stable enough for transport, maybe 12 hours minimum. We don't have 12 hours. Vance's jaw tightened as she glanced at her phone. The crowd outside has tripled in the last 5 minutes. Local news is running a story about a violent homeless man terrorizing staff. Someone's orchestrating this. Maya moved to the window overlooking the front entrance. The scene below looked surreal. Protesters with hastily made signs, news vans with satellite dishes, police trying to establish a perimeter. The hospital's security was completely overwhelmed. They're creating a distraction, Maya said quietly. Get everyone focused on the front entrance while they make their move somewhere else. Vance looked at her with new assessment. Exactly, which means we need to move him first. The doctor just said, the doctor doesn't understand what we're up against. Vance turned to her team. Prep for emergency transport, full medical support, Route Delta protocol. One of her agents stepped forward. Colonel, Route Delta puts us through the lower levels. The tunnels haven't been secured. Then secure them. I want eyes on every corridor between here and the underground garage. Nobody gets close without clearance. Vance's phone buzzed again. She read the message and her expression darkened. We just lost our window. Someone inside the hospital just sent out Colonel Reeves's location to an encrypted number. The attending physician had gone pale. That's impossible. Patient privacy laws? Someone sold him out. Maya's mind raced through the possibilities. The ICU staff, administration, security, any of them could have access to patient records. How long ago? 3 minutes. Vance was already moving, which means we have maybe 5 before they make their play. Maya grabbed her arm. Wait, if someone inside is feeding them information, they'll know whatever route you take. They'll be waiting. You have a better idea? Yes. Maya pulled out her phone, accessing the hospital's staff directory she technically no longer had clearance for. Harbor General has 3 separate ICU units on different floors. We moved the colonel to ICU 2 on the 7th floor, but we leak that we're taking him to the underground garage. Let them set up their ambush in the wrong place. Vance studied her. That could work, but we'd need a decoy convoy, and we'd need to move him through the hospital without anyone noticing. I know a way. Maya had spent 3 years navigating Harbor General's corridors during overnight shifts. She knew which hallways the cleaning crews avoided, which stairwells had broken cameras, which elevators were used only for equipment transport. But you have to trust me. The colonel's eyes narrowed. Your father said the same thing to me once, right before he walked into a situation that should have killed him and came out carrying 3 wounded men. She made a decision. All right, we do it your way, but if this goes wrong, it won't. 20 minutes later, Maya was pushing a laundry cart through a service corridor most staff didn't know existed. Inside the cart, beneath carefully arranged linens, Colonel Daniel Reeves lay intubated and monitored by portable equipment. One of Vance's agents, a compact woman who introduced herself only as Torres, walked beside her dressed in scrubs, carrying what looked like a medical equipment bag, but Maya suspected held considerably more lethal contents. Clear ahead, Torres murmured into her sleeve. They reached a service elevator used primarily for transporting biohazard waste. Maya had never been so grateful for Harbor General's labyrinthine design. The elevator opened onto the 7th floor's back corridor, where ICU-2 sat in a wing recently renovated but still underutilized. As they transferred Reeves to a private room, Maya caught sight of Vance coordinating the decoy operation through the main building. 3 vehicles had pulled up to the underground garage entrance, complete with full security detail. News cameras were already repositioning to catch the action. They're buying it, Torres said, watching a tablet that showed security feeds throughout the hospital. Multiple contacts converging on the garage level, professional movement patterns. Maya felt a chill. You mean they're military? Or former military, the kind who know how to move through a building without being seen? Torres adjusted something on her tablet. Colonel Vance's team is engaging now. Through Torres's earpiece, Maya could hear fragments of communication, terse commands, situation reports, the controlled urgency of professionals doing dangerous work. Then a burst of static, and Vance's voice cutting through. Contact level B2. Multiple hostiles. They're trying to breach the convoy. Torres's hand went to her weapon. We need to go dark. If they realize the convoy's a fake. The lights went out. Emergency lighting kicked in after 3 seconds, bathing the corridor in dim red. Maya's heart hammered as Torres moved to the door, weapon drawn. Someone cut the main power, Torres said quietly. They're escalating. Maya looked at Reeves, still unconscious in the hospital bed. The monitors were running on battery backup, but how long would that last? We need to get him on a ventilator that's connected to the generator system. We need to keep him hidden. Torres was scanning the corridor through a crack in the door. If the power's out throughout the hospital, they'll be searching room by room. Not if we make them think he's somewhere else. Maya grabbed a tablet, pulling up the hospital's patient system. Her credentials were suspended, but she knew the nursing supervisor's password. Patricia had never been good about changing it. I can move his digital records. Make it look like he was transferred to a different facility entirely. Torres gave her a sharp look. You can do that? Watch me. Maya's fingers flew across the screen, navigating through systems she'd used 1,000 times. Transfer orders, transport logs, even fake ambulance dispatch records. She made it look like Colonel Reeves had been moved to St. Michael's Hospital across town 30 minutes ago. Done. Anyone checking the system will think he's gone. Smart. Torres returned her attention to the corridor. But they might not rely on the system. They might have someone inside who knows. The door to the ICU wing crashed open. Torres moved instantly, positioning herself between the door and Reeves's room. Maya ducked behind the nurse's station, her breath coming in short gasps. Through the glass partition, she could see figures moving in the emergency lighting, at least 4 of them, moving with the same controlled precision Torres had shown. Check every room, a male voice commanded. American accent, military bearing. Patient is critical condition, probably intubated. He can't have gone far. Maya's mind raced. ICU-2 had 8 patient rooms. 4 were occupied with actual patients. Reeves was in room 6. The searchers were starting at room 1. She needed a distraction. Maya grabbed her phone, pulling up the hospital's emergency alert system. Another trick she'd learned during late-night shifts, how to trigger automated announcements, usually for things like fire drills or missing patients. She typed quickly, "Security alert. Suspicious individual spotted in main hospital cafeteria. All available personnel respond." The announcement blared through the hospital's PA system, loud enough to hear even with the main power down. The searchers paused, and Maya saw one of them touch his earpiece, clearly receiving new orders. "Check it out," the leader said to two of his team. "Might be a diversion, but we can't risk it." Two figures split off, heading back toward the main elevators. That left two searchers. Better odds, but still dangerous. Torres caught Maya's eye and made a series of hand signals. Maya didn't understand all of them, but the message was clear. Stay down, stay quiet. The searchers reached room 3. Maya heard them questioning the nurse inside, heard the fear in her voice as she stammered that she hadn't seen anyone matching the description. The searchers moved on. Room 4. Room 5. Torres had positioned herself just inside Reeves's room, out of sight from the corridor. Maya could see the tension in her shoulders, the way her hand rested on her weapon. The searchers reached room 6. The door opened, and Maya stopped breathing. Through the glass partition, she watched as one of the men entered the room, his partner covering the doorway. They were both armed, she realized, not trying to hide it anymore. Torres didn't move. She waited until both men were inside, until they turned their backs to check the bathroom, and then she struck. What happened next took maybe 5 seconds, but would replay in Maya's memory in slow motion. Torres disarmed the first man with a move so fast Maya barely saw it, redirecting his weapon toward the ceiling as she struck his throat with her other hand. The second man tried to turn, tried to bring his gun to bear, but Torres was already moving. She used the first man's body as a shield, then swept the second man's legs out from under him with a kick that looked effortless. Both men went down hard. Torres secured their weapons, zip-tied their hands, and gagged them with medical tape in the time it took Maya to cross the room. "Help me move them," Torres said quietly. They dragged the unconscious men into the bathroom and closed the door. Torres checked her tablet again, and her expression tightened. "The other two are coming back. They figured out the cafeteria alert was fake. How long do we have?" "Maybe 2 minutes." Maya looked at Reeves, still unconscious, completely vulnerable. They couldn't move him without risking his life, but staying here meant certain discovery. She needed another play, something these people wouldn't expect. Then she saw it. The emergency crash cart in the corner of the room, the one that held advanced life support equipment including a portable defibrillator. And suddenly she had an idea that was either brilliant or insane. "How good are you at acting?" Maya asked Torres. "Depends on the role." Panicked nurse trying to save a dying patient? Maya was already pulling the crash cart into position, adjusting the monitors. "Because we're about to code him." Torres understood immediately. They won't risk being seen near a code blue. Too many witnesses, too much attention. Exactly. Maya silenced the alarms on the monitors, then manually adjusted them to show a deteriorating rhythm. She grabbed the phone and called the overhead operator. "Code blue, ICU 2, room 6. Repeat, code blue, ICU 2, room 6. The announcement echoed through the hospital. Within seconds, Maya heard running footsteps, the real ICU team responding to the emergency. And somewhere in the distance, she heard the searchers retreating, melting back into the shadows rather than risk being identified. The ICU team burst through the door, 2 nurses and a resident Maya recognized. They took in the scene, Reeves in the bed, monitors showing critical rhythms, Maya and Torres in position. "What happened?" the resident demanded. "Sudden deterioration," Maya said, slipping into the familiar rhythm of a medical emergency. "VFib, then asystole. I was just about to shock." "You don't work here anymore," one of the nurses said, recognizing her. "Then arrest me after we save his life." Maya positioned the defibrillator paddles. Charging. Everyone clear. For a moment she thought they might refuse. Then the resident nodded and the team fell into their roles because that's what training did. It overrode everything else when someone's life hung in the balance. Except Reeves wasn't actually coding. His rhythm was stable, his vitals good. Maya had faked it all. She placed the paddles against his chest but didn't shock. Instead, she called out numbers, made it look like she was trying different interventions, bought time while Torres watched the corridor. After 5 minutes of simulated emergency care, Maya announced, "We've got him back, stable rhythm. Let's get him on a propofol drip, keep him sedated." The resident checked the monitors, his brow furrowing in confusion. "I don't understand. These readings show he's been stable the whole time." "Equipment malfunctioned during the power outage," Torres said smoothly, her hand resting casually on her hip where her weapon was concealed. "The monitors reset when backup power kicked in. We saw the deterioration before they went down." It was a weak explanation, but the resident was too tired and too overwhelmed to question it. The ER was in chaos, the power was out, and he had 8 other patients to worry about. "Fine, but someone needs to check all the equipment up here. We can't have another false alarm." He turned to Maya. "And you, I don't care what kind of emergency this was. You're not supposed to be here." "I know." Maya stepped back, letting the ICU nurses take over Reeves's care. "I'm leaving." But as she turned toward the door, Vance appeared in the corridor, her expression grim. Behind her were 3 of her agents, all looking like they'd just come from a fight. One had blood on his sleeve. "Status?" Torres asked quietly. "We caught 3 of them in the garage. 2 escaped. And we found this." Vance held up a military-grade radio, the kind with encrypted channels. "They've been coordinating with someone inside the hospital, someone with access to security systems and patient records." Maya felt sick. "Who?" "We're working on it. But whoever it is, they knew exactly where to cut the power, exactly which cameras to disable, and exactly when to send in the assault team." Vance's gaze swept the ICU. "This wasn't a random hit. This was planned by someone who knows this hospital inside and out." The resident had been listening, his face pale. "You're saying someone on staff is trying to kill a patient?" "I'm saying someone on staff is committing treason." Vance pulled out her badge. "This floor is now under federal lockdown. Nobody comes in or out without my clearance." As Vance's team began securing the ICU, Maya moved back to Reeves's room. He looked peaceful in the hospital bed, nothing like the dangerous precision she'd seen in the ER. But she could see the scars now, old ones that told stories of violence survived, recent ones that suggested he'd been through hell before landing in her ER. "Who are you, really?" she whispered. His eyes opened. Maya jumped back, her heart racing. Reeves should have been sedated, unconscious, but his gray eyes were clear and focused. He reached up slowly and pulled the breathing tube from his throat in one smooth motion, barely gagging, another sign of training, of someone who'd done this before. "You should be intubated," Maya started. "Been awake for 20 minutes. His voice was rough from the tube but steady. "Heard everything. The fake code was smart." "You let us think you were unconscious?" "Needed to see who I could trust." Reeves sat up slowly, his hands going to the IV lines. He began removing them with practiced efficiency. "Where's Vance?" "Right here." The colonel appeared in the doorway, her weapon drawn but pointed at the floor. "Colonel Reeves, it's good to see you alive." "Wish I could say the same." Reeves swung his legs over the side of the bed, and Maya saw him wince. Whatever he'd been through, his body was still paying for it. "But if you're here, it means they're getting desperate." "Who's they?" "The same people who've been killing off Silent Sentinel one by one." Reeves looked at Maya. "Your father was first, officially a heart attack, but I knew better. Thomas was the healthiest man I knew." Maya's throat tightened. "You knew my father?" "He saved my life in Kandahar. Took a bullet meant for me." Reeves touched his shoulder where Maya could see an old scar. "I've been trying to find out who killed him ever since. That's why I disappeared 7 months ago, went off-grid to investigate without tipping off whoever's behind this." "And what did you find?" Vance asked. Reeves's expression darkened. "I found a conspiracy that goes higher than you want to believe. Silent Sentinel did things, necessary things, that powerful people wanted buried. When some of us started talking about going public, about telling the truth, those powerful people decided we were liabilities." "Names!" Vance demanded. "I need names." "I have evidence. Documents, recordings, financial records. Proof that someone in the DOD has been systematically eliminating anyone who knows about Operation Nightfall." Maya had never heard of Operation Nightfall, but she saw Vance's face go white. "That's impossible," Vance said quietly. Nightfall was completely sealed. Only 5 people knew the full scope. 6, Reeves corrected, and 3 of them are dead now, which leaves 3 of us who know the truth. He looked at Vance with terrible certainty. "And if I'm the only one left alive, they win. They bury everything, and we become the monsters they always said we were." The room fell silent except for the beeping of monitors. Maya looked between them, seeing pieces of a picture she didn't fully understand, but knowing it was bigger and darker than she'd imagined. "Where's the evidence?" Vance finally asked. "Safe deposit box. But I'm the only one who can access it, and I can't do that from a hospital bed surrounded by people trying to kill me." "Then we move you, tonight. Get you somewhere secure where—" "No!" Reeves's voice cut through her planning. "We do this my way or not at all. I need 48 hours to retrieve the evidence and get it to someone who can't be bought or killed. Then you can have your trial, your justice, whatever you want. You're in no condition to—" "I'm in better condition than I look." Reeves stood, and Maya saw him steady himself against the bed. He was hurt, exhausted, but there was steel in his spine. "I've been living on the streets for 7 months, staying one step ahead of assassins. I can handle 48 hours. Vance studied him. "If I let you walk out of here, I'm ending my career. If you don't, you're ending your life. Because whoever's behind this, they've got reach inside your organization too. How else did those men know exactly where to find me?" It was a good point, and Maya saw Vance wrestling with it. The colonel had come here to save Reeves, but she'd also walked into a situation more complicated than she'd anticipated. "I can help," Maya heard herself say. Both of them turned to look at her. "You've been suspended," Vance said. "You're not—" "I'm exactly what he needs. Someone who knows the city, who doesn't show up on any federal databases, who these people have no reason to watch." Maya looked at Reeves. "And someone who wants the truth about what happened to her father." Reeves met her gaze, and something passed between them. Recognition, understanding, shared grief. "She's right. I need someone local, someone off the radar. No offense, Colonel, but your people stick out like searchlights." "This is insane," Vance said, but Maya could hear her resolve weakening. "She's a civilian nurse, not an operative." "My father trained me," Maya said quietly. "Not officially, not formally, but he taught me things. How to read a room, how to spot a tail, how to disappear if I needed to. He said it was just in case, but I think he knew. I think he knew eventually someone might come for him, and he wanted me to be ready." The admission hung in the air. Maya had never said it out loud before, had never acknowledged that her father's paranoia might have been justified. Reeves nodded slowly. "Thomas always thought ahead. If he trained you, that's good enough for me." "Absolutely not," Vance said, but she was already pulling out her phone. "I'm calling in more agents, establishing a proper security detail, and tipping off whoever's inside your organization that Reeves is still alive and mobile." Maya crossed her arms. "Face it, Colonel, the more official you make this, the more dangerous it becomes. But 2 people moving quietly, staying off grid, that might actually work." Vance looked like she wanted to argue, but footsteps in the corridor made everyone freeze. Torres appeared in the doorway, her expression urgent. "We've got a problem. Hospital administrator just showed up with a court order demanding we stand down and release the patient. Claims we have no jurisdiction." "On whose authority?" Vance demanded. "Federal judge. Signed 30 minutes ago." Torres handed over a document, and Vance's face darkened as she read it. "It's legitimate. We have to comply or face obstruction charges. This is impossible. Nobody could get a federal judge to sign this in the middle of the night unless they've got serious pull," Reeves finished. "I told you this goes high." "How high did you think I meant?" Vance crumpled the order in her fist. "We're out of time. They're going to walk in here with police backup and take you, and there's nothing I can legally do to stop them." "Then don't do it legally," Maya said. Everyone looked at her. "This hospital has a morgue," she continued, the plan forming as she spoke. "Bodies go in, bodies go out, and nobody questions a morgue transport van. Especially not in the middle of the night during a power outage when everyone's distracted." Reeves smiled, and it was the first genuine expression Maya had seen from him. "I like how you think. This is completely—" Vance started, but Reeves cut her off. "It's brilliant, and it might actually work." He looked at Vance. "You stay here. Comply with the order, act confused when I'm not where I'm supposed to be. Buy us time to disappear. And if they catch you, they won't. Reeves was already moving toward the door, pulling on the clothes Maya had salvaged from his earlier admission. Because I'm a ghost. I've been dead on paper for 7 months. A few more days won't hurt. Vance grabbed Maya's arm. If you do this, you're crossing a line. Federal obstruction, aiding a fugitive. They'll throw everything at you. Let them, Maya said, surprised by her own conviction. My father gave everything for people who erased him from history. I'm done letting powerful people decide who matters and who doesn't. Something in Vance's expression softened. Thomas would be proud of you. Stubborn, reckless, but proud. She released Maya's arm. 48 hours. After that, I'm coming for both of you with everything I've got. Fair enough? Reeves extended his hand and Vance shook it. Thank you for not making this easy. Don't thank me yet. You still have to make it out of this hospital alive. Maya led the way, guiding Reeves through the same service corridors she'd used to smuggle him in. The power was still out in sections of the hospital, which worked in their favor. Fewer cameras, fewer witnesses, more confusion. They took a maintenance elevator down to the sub-basement, where the hospital's morgue operated in climate-controlled silence. The night attendant looked up from his phone as they entered, his eyes widening at the sight of Reeves in a hospital gown and Maya in her scrubs. I need a favor, Maya said, hoping 3 years of friendly conversations and shared night shifts had built enough goodwill. And I need you to forget you ever saw us. The attendant, Jerry, a 50-year-old former paramedic who'd seen everything, took in the situation with practiced calm. This got anything to do with all those federal agents upstairs? Everything to do with them. Jerry thought about it for maybe 3 seconds. You helped my daughter when she had that allergic reaction last year. Stayed after your shift to make sure she was okay. He stood up and grabbed a set of keys. Transport van's out back. Keys will be on the seat. It's due for maintenance, so nobody will miss it until Monday. Jerry? I didn't see nothing. You weren't here. He looked at Reeves. Neither was your friend. Now get out of here before I have to actually file paperwork. 5 minutes later, Maya was driving a white morgue transport van through the back streets of Harbor City with a supposedly dead colonel in the passenger seat. The absurdity of the situation should have terrified her, but instead she felt more alive than she had in years. Where to? She asked. Reeves was watching the mirrors, checking for tails with automatic precision. North Side, Industrial District. I've got a place nobody knows about. They drove in silence for 10 minutes before Reeves spoke again. Your father talked about you, showed me pictures, said you were going to be a doctor. Maya's hands tightened on the wheel. That was the plan, until the money ran out and I had to settle for nursing school. Thomas never settled for anything in his life. I doubt his daughter does either. You didn't know him at the end. The nightmares, the paranoia, the way he jumped at every sound. Maya's voice cracked. I thought he was losing his mind. I thought the war had broken something in him that couldn't be fixed. The war did break something, all of us. Reeves touched the window, his reflection ghost-like in the glass. But Thomas wasn't paranoid. He was right to be afraid. We all were. Who killed him? I don't know yet, but I know why. Reeves turned to face her. Operation Nightfall was supposed to prevent a terrorist attack. Intelligence said there was a cell planning to hit multiple targets in the U.S. Schools, hospitals, soft targets that would cause maximum casualties. We were sent in to neutralize the threat. And did you? We found the cell, eliminated them, saved thousands of lives that'll never know how close they came to dying. His voice went flat. But the intelligence was wrong. The cell wasn't independent. They were being funded and directed by someone inside our own government, someone using them to justify increased defense spending and expanded surveillance powers. Maya nearly swerved off the road. You're saying, I'm saying we killed people who were pawns in a game we didn't understand. And when we started asking questions, when we started demanding to know who'd sent us on that mission, people started dying. Reeves's fist clenched. Your father figured it out first. He tracked down financial records, found evidence of the money trail. He was going to go public, blow the whole thing wide open. And they gave him a heart attack, Maya whispered. Injected potassium chloride. Looks like natural cardiac arrest if you're not looking for it. He never had a chance. Reeves's voice was raw with guilt. I should have protected him, should have seen it coming. You can't protect everyone. I can protect his daughter. I can make sure the truth comes out so his death means something. Reeves pointed to an upcoming turn. Left here. Then right at the warehouse with the broken windows. They pulled into what looked like an abandoned industrial park. Reeves directed her to a warehouse that seemed structurally unsound, but when they got inside, Maya saw it had been converted into a surprisingly secure living space. Running water, electricity from an unauthorized tap into the city grid, and enough supplies to survive for months. Home sweet home, Reeves said with bitter humor. Been here for 3 months. Before that, I rotated between 6 other locations, never staying anywhere long enough to establish a pattern. Maya looked around at the Spartan accommodations, a cot, some canned food, a laptop that looked expensive and highly illegal. This is how you've been living? This is how you stay alive when the world thinks you're dead. As Reeves collapsed onto the cot, exhaustion finally overwhelming him, Maya realized the full weight of what she'd signed up for. She'd thrown away her career, probably her freedom, definitely her safety, all for a man she'd known for less than 12 hours and a conspiracy she barely understood. But she thought about her father, about the funeral where the army had sent exactly 2 representatives and a flag. She thought about all the nights she'd heard him crying in his room, about the scars on his hands and the fear in his eyes. Thomas Chen had deserved better. All of them had. And Maya was going to make sure the world knew it. Outside in the distance, she heard sirens, police, fire, maybe federal agents searching for a patient who'd vanished from a lockdown hospital floor. They'd be looking for her too soon enough. Suspended nurse turned fugitive accomplice. But for the first time since her father's death, Maya Chen felt like she was exactly where she needed to be. Reeves's breathing had steadied into sleep, his body finally allowing itself to rest. Maya settled into a chair by the window, watching the street below for any sign of trouble, and pulled out her phone. One message waited, from a number she didn't recognize. You made a mistake. Last chance to walk away. Maya deleted it without responding and turned off her phone. She was done walking away. Outside, dawn was still hours away, and somewhere in Harbor City, powerful people were realizing they had a problem they couldn't simply erase. They were about to find out just how big a problem that was. Maya watched the gray light of dawn creep across the warehouse floor, her body exhausted but her mind refusing to shut down. Every sound outside made her hand move toward the tire iron she'd found leaning against the wall. Not much of a weapon, but better than nothing. Reeves had been asleep for 4 hours, his breathing finally steady after the trauma his body had endured. Her phone buzzed. She'd turned it back on despite knowing it was a risk, but she needed to monitor what was happening. The screen showed a news alert. Federal manhunt underway for missing patient and suspended nurse. They'd gone public. That changed everything. Maya scrolled through the article, her stomach sinking with each paragraph. The story painted her as unstable, possibly suffering from delusions, definitely dangerous. Reeves was described as a mentally ill vagrant who'd violently assaulted hospital staff. The article included her photo, her hospital ID badge picture, smiling and professional, now attached to words like armed and desperate. They're not wasting time. Reeves's voice made her jump. He was sitting up on the cot, looking more alert than he had any right to. Let me guess. You're a disgruntled employee, I'm a dangerous psychotic, and together we're a threat to public safety. Something like that. Maya showed him the article. They're offering a $50,000 reward for information leading to our arrest. Reeves read it, his expression darkening. That's not law enforcement. That's someone with deep pockets trying to flush us out. 50,000 is enough to make regular people look twice at every stranger they see. So what do? We stick to the plan. I need to get to that safe deposit box, and you need to stay out of sight. Reeves stood, testing his balance. Maya could see he was still hurting, but his movements were controlled. The bank doesn't open until 9. That gives us 3 hours to prepare. You can't just walk into a bank. They'll have your face, whatever face you used to open the account, flagged in every system. Which is why I won't be walking in. Not exactly. Reeves moved to the laptop and powered it on. The machine came to life, showing multiple windows, security camera feeds, news streams, what looked like encrypted communication channels. I set up contingencies. Multiple identities, backup plans, dead drops. The box is registered to a corporation that doesn't exist, accessed through a lawyer who died 2 years ago. Maya stared at the screen. You've been planning this for a while. Since the day your father died. Reeves pulled up a file showing bank security footage from months ago. I knew eventually they'd come for me too, so I made sure that if I went down, I could take them with me. Who exactly is them? Reeves's fingers paused over the keyboard. You really want to know? Because once I tell you, there's no going back. You become a target not just for elimination, but for permanent silence. Maya thought about her apartment, her friends, the life she'd built over 3 years in Harbor City. All of it was already gone, burned to ash the moment she'd refused to let Reeves die. Tell me. The operation that killed your father's unit, Operation Nightfall, was authorized by 3 people. Senator Richard Hastings, who chairs the Armed Services Committee, General James Carver, who runs Special Operations Command, and a CIA officer named Michael Brennan, who's now Deputy Director. Reeves pulled up photos of each man. They used us to eliminate a terrorist cell that they'd created and funded themselves, all to justify a $200 billion increase in defense spending. That's insane. Why would they? Money, power, control. Reeves's voice was flat. Hastings has investments in 4 major defense contractors. Carver was promised the Joint Chiefs position. Brennan wanted to expand CIA operations into domestic territory. They manufactured a threat, sent us to eliminate it, and planned to bury the evidence along with anyone who knew the truth. Maya felt sick. My father figured it out. Thomas tracked the money, found shell corporations, offshore accounts, payments that didn't make sense. He was going to take it to the press. Reeves closed the laptop. They killed him 3 days before his scheduled meeting with a Washington Post journalist. And the others? The rest of Silent Sentinel? Dead within 18 months. Car accidents, suicides, one random mugging gone wrong. I'm the last one left who can testify to what really happened. Reeves met her eyes. The evidence in that safe deposit box is enough to bring down all 3 of them. Financial records, classified documents, recordings of conversations, everything needed to prove the conspiracy. Then why haven't you released it already? Because I need it to go to the right people. Not politicians who can be bought, not journalists who can be silenced. I need someone who has the power to act and the integrity to do it. Reeves pulled out a burner phone. There's a federal prosecutor named Catherine Wright. She's investigating defense contractor fraud, and she's already gotten close enough to make Hastings nervous. If I can get the evidence to her, she can bring charges that stick. Maya's mind raced through the logistics. How do we contact her without being tracked? We don't. She contacts us. Reeves showed her a secure messaging app. I sent her encrypted samples of the evidence months ago. She's been trying to verify them ever since. Once we have the full package from the safe deposit box, I ping her and she comes to us. And you trust her? As much as I trust anyone. She's already put 2 congressmen in prison and survived 3 accidents that were probably attempts on her life. Reeves checked his watch. But first we need to survive the next few hours. They know we're in Harbor City. They'll be watching transportation hubs, hotels, known associates. We need to move carefully. A sound outside froze them both, footsteps, multiple people, moving with purpose. Reeves killed the laptop screen and moved to the window. Maya grabbed the tire iron, her heart hammering. 3 figures were approaching the warehouse, dressed like utility workers but moving wrong, too alert, too coordinated. One of them spoke into a radio, and though Maya couldn't hear the words, she saw Reeves's expression harden. They found us, he said quietly. Back door, now. They moved fast but controlled, Reeves grabbing a backpack that Maya realized had been pre-packed for exactly this scenario. The warehouse had a rear exit that opened onto an alley, and they slipped through just as the front door crashed inward. Don't run, Reeves murmured. Walk normally, 2 people heading to work. Maya forced herself to match his pace, resisting every instinct that screamed at her to sprint. Behind them, she heard shouting as the searchers realized the warehouse was empty. This way. Reeves guided her through a maze of alleys that suggested he'd scouted multiple escape routes. They emerged onto a busy street where early morning commuters were heading to jobs and coffee shops, and suddenly they were just two more faces in the crowd. But Maya could feel eyes on them. A man in a parked car looked up from his phone as they passed. A woman at a bus stop turned to watch them. The news was out, their faces were everywhere, and $50,000 was a powerful motivator. "The bank is 10 blocks from here," Reeves said, keeping his voice low. "We need transportation that won't be tracked. Steal a car? Too risky. Cameras everywhere, and a stolen vehicle report would pinpoint our location." Reeves scanned the street, and his gaze landed on a bike share station. Perfect. 10 minutes later, they were pedaling through Harbor City's morning traffic, anonymous among dozens of other cyclists. It was brilliant in its simplicity. No ID required beyond a prepaid credit card, no cameras in the bikes themselves, and the ability to switch bikes at any station to break their trail. They ditched the first set of bikes 3 blocks from the bank, walked 2 blocks, picked up new bikes, circled back. By the time they locked the bikes near the bank, Maya's legs were burning, but she had to admit the strategy had worked. Anyone tracking them would have a nightmare trying to piece together their route. The bank was an older building, pre-digital era architecture with modern security grafted on. Reeves studied it from across the street, his eyes tracking cameras and security positions. "There's a problem," he said quietly. Maya followed his gaze and saw them, 2 men in suits standing near the bank entrance, trying to look casual, but failing. Their posture was wrong, their attention too focused on everyone entering and exiting. "Federal agents?" Maya asked. "Or contractors pretending to be? Either way, they're watching for me." Reeves's jaw tightened. They must have flagged every safe deposit box registered to known aliases. The moment I try to access it, alarms go off. Then we need a different approach. "I'm listening." Maya studied the bank, thinking through the problem like it was a complex medical procedure. You couldn't force it, couldn't rush it. You had to find the path of least resistance. The box is in your name, or whatever name you used. But what if someone else accessed it with proper legal authority? Like who? Like your attorney. Banks allow attorneys to access their clients' safe deposit boxes with proper documentation. Maya was making this up as she went, building on fragments of knowledge from a law class she'd taken in college. "We just need to look like an attorney and client having a perfectly normal meeting." Reeves considered this. That could work. But we'd need convincing documentation, and we don't exactly have time to forge legal papers. Don't need to forge what already exists. Maya pulled out her phone, accessing the hospital's administrative system one more time. Patricia might have suspended my clinical access, but she forgot about the legal database. Hospitals keep templates for everything: power of attorney forms, advance directives, legal authorizations. Her fingers flew across the screen, pulling up documents and modifying them with information Reeves provided. 15 minutes later, she had a reasonably convincing power of attorney document naming her as the legal representative for one Robert Mitchell, the identity Reeves had used to register the box. "It won't hold up to serious scrutiny," Maya admitted, "but for a quick verification by a bank employee who's seen 1,000 similar documents, it might work." Might isn't exactly reassuring. Neither is staying out here where those men will eventually spot us. Maya squared her shoulders. "I can do this. I've talked my way through 3 years of doctors second-guessing me. A bank teller should be easy." Reeves looked at her with something like respect. "Your father used to say the same thing before every mission." "I can do this." He was usually right. Then let's hope I inherited his luck along with his stubbornness. They split up, with Reeves circling to a coffee shop with a clear view of the bank entrance, while Maya approached alone. The men in suits glanced at her but showed no recognition. Why would they? They were looking for a suspended nurse and a homeless veteran, not a professional woman in borrowed clothes carrying a tablet and wearing confidence like armor. Inside the bank, Maya approached the customer service desk with the polished smile she'd perfected during 3 years of dealing with difficult patients. "Good morning. I need to access a safe deposit box on behalf of my client." The bank employee, a woman in her 50s named Margaret, according to her name tag, looked up from her computer. "Of course, I'll need to see identification and legal documentation." Maya handed over the fake power of attorney and her real driver's license. gambling that they wouldn't have connected her face to the manhunt yet. Margaret studied both documents with the careful attention of someone who'd been doing this job long enough to spot most frauds. "Mr. Mitchell's box," Margaret said slowly. "He hasn't accessed it in quite some time. He's been ill. That's why he sent me." Maya kept her voice steady, professional. "Is there a problem?" Margaret's fingers moved across her keyboard, and Maya saw her expression shift, just slightly, but enough to send alarm bells ringing. "I'm going to need to verify this with my manager. One moment, please." She stood and walked toward a private office, taking Maya's documents with her. Through the glass partition, Maya could see her talking to a man in a suit, saw them both looking at a computer screen, saw the manager's expression change. They knew. Somehow, they knew. Maya fought every instinct to run. Running would confirm guilt, would bring security, would end everything. Instead, she pulled out her phone and texted Reeves a single word: compromised. His response was immediate: "Exit now, rear door." But Maya saw the security guard moving to block the rear exit, saw another employee picking up a phone, saw the trap closing. She had maybe 30 seconds before they locked down the entire bank. Then she remembered something her father had taught her during a childhood camping trip. "When you're cornered," he'd said, "don't fight the trap. Spring it on your own terms." Maya walked calmly toward the manager's office and knocked. Margaret and the manager both turned, startled. Maya opened the door with her best professional smile. "I apologize for the confusion," she said. "I realized I brought the wrong documents. My client must have provided outdated information. I'll return when I have the correct paperwork." It was a gamble, admitting error, backing down, acting like someone who'd made an honest mistake rather than someone trying to commit fraud. The manager's suspicion wavered. Maya saw it in his eyes, the calculation of whether this was worth making a scene over. "Perhaps that would be best," he said finally. "We take document verification very seriously. Of course, I appreciate your diligence." Maya held out her hand for her documents. The manager hesitated, then handed them back. She walked out of the bank at exactly the same pace she'd entered, fighting the urge to look back, to run, to do anything that would mark her as guilty. The men in suits were talking to someone on a phone, heads together in urgent discussion. They glanced her way, but without recognition. Maya turned the corner and found Reeves waiting with 2 bikes. "We need to move. They'll figure it out in about 2 minutes." They pedaled hard, weaving through traffic, switching bikes twice more. Behind them, Maya heard sirens beginning to converge on the bank. They'd missed the window by seconds. "We can't get to the evidence," Maya said as they ducked into a parking garage to catch their breath. "They're watching every approach." Then we changed the approach. Reeves was already on his phone, typing rapidly. "I have one more option. Risky as hell, but it might be our only shot." "What kind of risky?" "The kind where we walk into the lion's den and dare them to bite." Reeves showed her what he was typing, a message to Catherine Wright, the federal prosecutor. "I'm telling her everything. Where the evidence is, what it contains, and who's trying to hide it. If we can't get to the box ourselves, we get her to do it with federal authority. And if she's compromised? If she's part of the conspiracy? Then we're dead anyway." Reeves hit send. "But I don't think she is. She survived too many attacks, pushed too hard on too many powerful people. If she was bought, she'd have backed off by now." Maya's phone buzzed, another news alert, this time with security footage from the bank, showing her face clearly. The caption read, "Suspect identified, Maya Chen attempts bank fraud in connection with federal fugitive." They were out of time and options. Reeves's burner phone rang, making them both jump. He answered on speaker, and a woman's voice cut through, sharp and commanding. "This is Catherine Wright. I just received your message, Colonel Reeves. If this is authentic, you need to come in immediately. Federal protection, full immunity, the works." "Can't do that, ma'am. Too many people in federal agencies want me dead." "Then what exactly do you expect me to do?" "I expect you to get a warrant for that safe deposit box in the next 2 hours and secure the evidence before it disappears. Because if you don't, 3 men responsible for killing American soldiers to line their pockets are going to walk free." Silence on the line. Then, "You're talking about Hastings, Carver, and Brennan. You already suspected. Suspecting and proving are different things. Do you have actual evidence or just conspiracy theories?" I have financial records showing $200 million in illegal payments, classified documents proving they created the terrorist cell they sent us to eliminate, and recordings of them discussing how to eliminate witnesses. Reeves's voice was steel. I have everything you need to put them away for life. And you'll testify? I'll do more than testify. I'll give you every detail of Operation Nightfall, every name, every mission, but I need guarantees, full immunity for myself and Maya Chen, witness protection if we want it, and a promise that this goes all the way to trial. Wright was quiet for a long moment. I can't promise trial outcomes, but I can promise I'll fight like hell to get you there. Send me the location of the safe deposit box. Reeves rattled off the bank address and box number. You'll need to move fast. They're probably already working to access it through back channels. Let them try. I'll have federal marshals and a warrant there within the hour. Wright paused. Colonel, I need you to understand something. If you're lying to me, if this is some kind of setup, I will spend the rest of my career making sure you rot in prison. Fair enough, but I'm not lying. Then stay alive until I can bring you in. And Colonel, your father served with my brother in Desert Storm. He was a good man. If what you're saying is true, I owe it to both of them to see this through. The call ended. Reeves and Maya sat in the parking garage, surrounded by concrete and shadows, with nothing to do but wait. You think she'll really come through? Maya asked. I think she's our only chance. Reeves leaned back against the wall, exhaustion showing through his controlled exterior. Your father used to say that sometimes you have to trust someone even when every instinct tells you not to. He was usually right about that too. Maya's phone buzzed again. This time it was a call from an unknown number. Against her better judgment, she answered. Maya Chen? The voice was male, cultured, with an edge of steel underneath. My name is Senator Richard Hastings. I believe we need to talk. Maya's blood went cold. She hit the speaker button so Reeves could hear. I have nothing to say to you, Senator. I think you do. You see, I know where you are. Well, not precisely at this moment, but I know you're in Harbor City, and I know you're with a very dangerous, very delusional man who's filled your head with stories. He told me about Operation Nightfall. Hastings laughed, and it sounded genuine. Did he? And you believed him? A man who's been living on the streets for months, who's clearly suffering from PTSD and paranoid delusions. Maya, I've reviewed your record. You're a smart woman, too smart to throw away your life for conspiracy theories. The evidence? There is no evidence. Just a sad collection of fabricated documents from a man who can't cope with the things he did during his service. Hastings' voice turned sympathetic. I understand wanting to believe your father was more than he was, that his death meant something, but sometimes a heart attack is just a heart attack. You killed him. I've never killed anyone, Ms. Chen. I'm a United States Senator who spent 30 years serving this country. What Colonel Reeves won't tell you is that he's wanted for desertion, for stealing classified documents, and for making false accusations against decorated officers. He's using you because you're vulnerable. Maya looked at Reeves, searching his face for any sign that Hastings might be right. She found only grim determination. Here's what I'm offering, Hastings continued. You turn yourself into the nearest police station within the next hour, you cooperate fully, and I'll personally ensure all charges against you are dropped. You can go back to your life, your career, everything. All you have to do is walk away from a man who's already destroyed himself and is trying to take you down with him. And if I don't, then you become an enemy of the United States government. We'll hunt you, we'll find you, and we'll prosecute you to the fullest extent of the law. And when Colonel Reeves inevitably gets himself killed, you'll be alone in a federal prison wondering why you trusted a madman over your own common sense. The line went dead. Reeves looked at Maya, and she saw the question in his eyes. After everything Hastings had said, did she still believe? Was she still willing to risk everything? Maya thought about her father, about the scars on his hands, and the nightmares that had consumed him. She thought about the way Reeves moved, the precision that spoke of training and purpose, not delusion. She thought about the fear in Hastings' voice beneath all that smooth confidence. He's scared, Maya said. Maya, if you were really just a delusional deserter, he wouldn't bother calling me. He'd just let the police handle it. You sure about that? No. But I'm sure that my father didn't die of a random heart attack at 53. I'm sure that there's something in that safe deposit box worth killing for. And I'm sure that walking away now means everyone who died for the truth died for nothing. Reeves nodded slowly. Once Wright gets that warrant, there's no going back. They'll know we've won, and they'll come at us with everything. Then we'd better be ready. They didn't have to wait long. 30 minutes later, Reeves's phone buzzed with a message from Wright. Warrant secured. Federal marshals en route to bank. Stay dark until I contact you. But before either of them could respond, the parking garage's security gate crashed open and 3 black SUVs poured in, moving with military precision. Armed men in tactical gear spilled out, taking positions with practiced efficiency. "Federal agents!" one of them shouted. "On the ground, hands behind your heads!" Reeves grabbed Maya's arm. "These aren't feds. Real federal agents announce their agency. These are contractors." They ran, deeper into the parking garage, but the exits were already blocked. The tactical team was herding them, pushing them toward the upper levels where there would be nowhere left to go. "What do we do?" Maya gasped as they hit the stairs, taking them 2 at a time. "We make them think twice about killing us publicly." Reeves pulled out his phone and started a live video stream. "Everyone watching this, my name is Colonel Daniel Reeves. I'm being hunted by people who want to cover up war crimes and conspiracy. If I die in the next few minutes, it wasn't an accident." The video was broadcasting to Wright's secure channel, to encrypted backups, to cloud servers that would preserve it even if they died. It was a last-ditch insurance policy, make their deaths too visible to ignore. They burst onto the top level of the parking garage, open to the sky, with nowhere left to run. The tactical team emerged from the stairwells, weapons raised. "On the ground! Last warning!" But Reeves was still filming, still talking. "Operation Nightfall, Senator Richard Hastings, General James Carver, Deputy Director Michael Brennan. They created terrorists to justify war profits. They killed American soldiers to protect their secrets. The evidence is in Harbor City First National Bank, box number 2847. Don't let them bury it." The team leader made a hand signal. Maya saw fingers tightening on triggers, saw the calculation in their eyes. They were going to do it. They were going to kill 2 unarmed people in broad daylight and deal with the consequences later. Then sirens filled the air, real ones this time, coming from every direction. Police cars, federal vehicles, even news helicopters converging on the parking garage. Catherine Wright's voice boomed from a megaphone. "This is Federal Prosecutor Catherine Wright. Everyone stand down. This area is under federal jurisdiction." The tactical team hesitated, their advantage evaporating as legitimate federal marshals poured into the garage. The contractors looked at each other, calculating odds that had suddenly shifted dramatically against them. Their team leader made another hand signal, and they withdrew in controlled stages, backing toward their vehicles. Within 2 minutes, they were gone, vanishing into Harbor City traffic before anyone could detain them. Wright approached with a squad of marshals, her expression unreadable. She was 50, gray-haired, with the bearing of someone who'd spent decades in courtrooms facing down powerful defendants. Her eyes landed on Reeves and Maya with laser focus. "Colonel Reeves, Ms. Chen, you two have caused quite a lot of trouble." "Sorry about that," Reeves said, still breathing hard. "We were trying not to die." "I watched your video. It's already been viewed 40,000 times and climbing." Wright gestured to her marshals, who began establishing a perimeter. "I've secured the safe deposit box. My team is cataloging the contents now. And based on what we're finding, I'm issuing arrest warrants for Senator Hastings, General Carver, and Deputy Director Brennan within the hour." Maya felt her knees go weak. "It's over?" "It's just beginning." Wright's expression was grim. These men have spent decades building power and connections. Arresting them will be easy. Convicting them will be war. I'll need both of you to testify, to go through every detail of Operation Nightfall and its aftermath. Your lives are going to be examined, attacked, torn apart by the best lawyers money can buy. "We're ready," Reeves said. "I hope so. Because as of this moment, you're in federal protective custody until trial. That means no outside contact, no social media, no communication with anyone who isn't cleared by my office." Wright looked at Maya specifically. "You'll be safe, but you won't be free." Is that acceptable? Maya thought about her apartment, her friends, the life she'd built. All of it would have to wait. But her father's memory, the truth about how he died, the justice he'd been denied, that couldn't wait any longer. It's acceptable, she said. Wright nodded and began walking them toward a secure vehicle. As they crossed the parking garage, Maya saw news cameras filming from the street below, saw reporters already spinning narratives about dramatic captures and federal operations. But she also saw something else. A black sedan parked on a side street, watching the scene unfold. The windows were tinted, but Maya could feel eyes on her, assessing, calculating. The sedan pulled away slowly, disappearing into traffic. Reeves saw it too. His hand found Maya's arm, and he leaned close enough to whisper, "This isn't over. Wright can arrest them, but their people are still out there. Still loyal, still dangerous. Then we stay alert, always." As the federal vehicle pulled away from the parking garage, taking them toward a safe house and an uncertain future, Maya's phone, which the marshals hadn't yet confiscated, buzzed one final time. A message from an unknown number. "You think you've won. You haven't." The box was empty. Maya showed it to Reeves, watching his face drain of color. "That's impossible," he whispered. "I checked it 3 months ago. Everything was there. Could someone have accessed it, stolen the contents? Not without my authorization, not without—" Reeves stopped, a terrible realization crossing his face. Unless they had someone inside the bank, someone who could bypass security protocols. Wright was in the front seat, on her phone coordinating the arrests. She didn't hear them, didn't see the message. "What do we do?" Maya asked. Reeves's jaw set with grim determination. "We tell her the truth. That we just bet everything on evidence that might not exist anymore. And we pray that 3 months ago I was paranoid enough to make a backup." Maya's heart sank. "Did you?" "I don't know. I don't remember." The trauma, the months on the streets, the constant fear, all of it had taken its toll. But we're about to find out, because if that box is really empty, if they got to the evidence first, then we just painted targets on our backs for nothing. The vehicle accelerated onto the highway, carrying them toward either vindication or destruction, and neither of them knew which was waiting at the end. Part Bay Viet Tiep. Câu chuyện liên mắc ngay từ câu cuối Part 2. Không recap, không giới thiệu lại. Viết 6.500 đến 7.000 từ bảng English, US. Ngôi thứ 3, Cinematic, giàu cảm xúc, nhịp nhanh, đưa câu chuyện vào cao trào lớn nhất, yêu cầu. Nồi mượt bằng câu chuyện tiếp tự nhiên, tăng áp lực, tăng stakes, không dùng bullet gạch chéo tiêu đề phủ, không lan man. Hội thoại chiếm khoảng 20 đến 25%, ngắn, sắc, đầy xung đột và quyết định. Duy trì chủ đề xuyên suốt, bị coi thường đến công lý, đến sức mạnh thầm lặng, đến lật kèo, đến được công nhận. Cứ sau 800 đến 1.200 từ, hãy giới thiệu một sự leo thang hoặc khúc mắc mới. Thể hiện chủ nghĩa hiện thực chiến thuật, cộng chủ nghĩa hiện thực y tế, quy trình, phản ứng, hậu quả rõ ràng, không phi logic. Tránh lặp lại, không giải thích lặp lại, không dùng cụm từ lặp lại, không có cảnh đẹp. Kết thúc part 3 bằng cliffhanger cực mạnh, nhưng không nói phần sau gạch chéo to be continued. Không nhắc đến God gạch chéo Jesus gạch chéo faith. Trả lời trọng chất, không chuyển sang document. 1339. Maya's fingers tightened on the phone as Wright ended her call and turned around in her seat. The prosecutor's expression was already shifting from confident to concerned before either of them spoke. "What's wrong?" Wright asked, her instincts too sharp to miss the tension radiating from the back seat. Reeves showed her the message without a word. Wright read it, her jaw muscles working as she processed the implications. She immediately dialed another number, her voice clipped and commanding. "Status on the box retrieval, now!" A pause. "I don't care if you're still cataloging. Tell me if there's actually anything in it." Maya watched Wright's face go pale. "How is that possible?" Wright's voice rose. "We had marshals on site within 20 minutes of securing the warrant. Who accessed it before we arrived?" Another pause. "Find out. Pull every piece of security footage from the last 6 months. I want names, faces, everything." Wright ended the call and turned to face them fully. "The box was opened 4 hours ago. Someone with proper credentials accessed it, emptied the contents, and walked out before my team arrived." 4 hours ago, we were still at the warehouse, Maya said. They knew we were coming for it. More than that, they knew exactly when to move. Wright's mind was already racing through possibilities, which means either they've been monitoring our communications or someone in my office is feeding them information. Reeves leaned forward. I made copies. Not of everything, but enough. The financial records, some of the classified documents. I kept them in a separate location. Where? I don't remember. The admission clearly cost him. 7 months on the street, multiple head injuries, constant stress. My memory has gaps, big ones. Wright's expression hardened. Then we have a serious problem. Without that evidence, I can't arrest anyone. The warrants I was about to issue become worthless, and the video you just broadcast to 40,000 people becomes defamation against 3 of the most powerful men in Washington. There has to be something, Maya said, some trigger that could help him remember. Memory doesn't work that way, not with trauma-induced amnesia. Wright pulled out her tablet, already working through options. We need a different approach. If the copies exist, where would you have hidden them? Reeves closed his eyes, pressing fingers to his temples. Somewhere safe. Somewhere they wouldn't think to look. Somewhere connected to Silent Sentinel. Your father's unit, Maya said suddenly. You said you were trying to honor them. Where would they have hidden something important? Thomas had a storage unit, county storage on Maple Street, Unit 42. Reeves's eyes snapped open. He showed it to me once, said it was where he kept things the Army didn't need to know about. After he died, I kept paying the rent, never went through his stuff, couldn't face it. Maya's heart hammered. You think you hid the copies there? It's the only place that makes sense. Connected to your father, off any grid the government would think to check. Reeves looked at Wright. But if I'm wrong, if there's nothing there, then we're done. Wright was already redirecting the driver. But it's the only lead we have, so we're checking it out. How long has it been since you've been there? 7 months. Right before I went underground. The federal vehicle changed course, heading toward the older industrial section of Harbor City, where storage facilities clustered like concrete mushrooms. Wright made calls as they drove, pulling in additional security, arranging for a tactical team to sweep the location before they arrived. If they were monitoring communications, they might know about this too, one of her agents warned over the radio. Then we go in fast and we go in hard. Wright checked her weapon with practiced efficiency. Nobody accesses that unit until we've secured the evidence. They arrived at county storage to find it already surrounded by federal vehicles. Marshals had established a perimeter, and the facility manager, a nervous man in his 60s, was being questioned by agents about recent visitors. Nobody's accessed Unit 42 in months, the manager insisted. I'd remember. That's one of the few that still pays by check instead of auto debit. Wright turned to Reeves. You paid by check? Cash. I mailed cash. Reeves was already moving toward the unit, his body language shifting into the controlled alertness Maya had first seen in the ER. Someone's lying. They found out who 60 seconds later when one of the marshals radioed from the unit itself. Ma'am, we've got a problem. The lock's been cut, recent, within the last hour. Wright drew her weapon and moved forward, her team falling into formation around her. Maya stayed close to Reeves, her medical training screaming that he shouldn't be mobile, that his body needed rest, but knowing rest wasn't an option anymore. The storage unit's door was already open, revealing a space that had been systematically ransacked. Boxes were torn open, content scattered. Everything that had been Thomas Chen's carefully preserved life now spread across the concrete floor like garbage. Maya felt something crack inside her chest. These were her father's things. His uniforms, his medals, photographs of her as a child. Someone had violated all of it, searching for the evidence. Did they find it? Wright asked, her voice tight. Reeves was moving through the wreckage, his hands sorting through items with increasing desperation. I don't know. I can't remember where I would have put it. Think. You came here 7 months ago. You had copies of the most important evidence of your life. Where would you have hidden them? I don't know. Reeves's control was fracturing. I was paranoid, exhausted, running on fumes. I could have put them anywhere, could have buried them in the floor for all I remember. Maya knelt beside a box of her father's personal effects. Letters, photos, a watch that had stopped working years before his death. Her fingers traced the edges of items she'd thought were lost forever, and something clicked in her mind. "The watch," she said quietly. Reeves turned. "What?" "My father's watch. He never wore it, said it was broken, but he kept it in a safe deposit box at the bank for years, said it was too valuable to throw away." Maya picked it up, feeling the weight of it. What if it wasn't actually broken? What if he was hiding something inside it? She turned the watch over, examining the back plate. There, almost invisible unless you knew what to look for, were tiny scratches around the edge, the kind made by a tool prying it open. Reeves was beside her in an instant. "Do you know how to open it?" "I watched him do it once when I was a kid. He said I was too young to understand, but I remembered." Maya pulled a small screwdriver from a toolkit scattered on the floor and carefully worked the back plate loose. Inside the watch mechanism was a micro SD card wrapped in waterproof material. Wright's breath caught. "Is that only one way to find out?" Reeves took the card with trembling hands and inserted it into Wright's tablet. The screen flickered, then filled with folders, financial records, classified documents, audio files, video files. Everything. "You brilliant bastard," Wright whispered. "You hid it in plain sight, and something they'd think was just a sentimental keepsake." "Thomas hid it," Reeves corrected. "I must have found his hiding spot and used the same method. He taught me that. The best place to hide something valuable is inside something broken." Wright was already scrolling through files, her expression growing darker with each folder she opened. "This is it. This is everything we need. Bank transfers linking Hastings to shell corporations, classified memos proving Carver authorized the creation of the terrorist cell, recorded conversations between Brennan and foreign assets. We've got them." Maya felt tears burning her eyes as she watched her father's final gift to them unfold across the screen. He'd known. Somehow, he'd known that one day someone would need this evidence, and he'd made sure it survived him. "We need to move this to a secure location immediately," Wright was saying. "Copy it to multiple servers, get it into evidence lockup." The explosion cut her off. The blast came from the front of the storage facility, a concussive wave that knocked them all off their feet. Maya's ears rang as debris rained down, and through the smoke she could see figures moving, tactical operators, the same kind who'd tried to corner them in the parking garage. "They followed us," Reeves shouted over the ringing in Maya's ears. "Or they were already here waiting." Wright was on a radio, calling for backup, but the response was chaos. The marshals at the perimeter were under fire, pinned down by professional shooters using military-grade weapons. "We need to get that card out of here," Wright said, ejecting it from her tablet and handing it to Maya. "You're a civilian. They won't expect you to be carrying it." "What about you?" "I'm the prosecutor. They'll assume I have it." Wright's smile was grim. "Which means I'm about to become a very effective decoy." Before Maya could protest, Wright was moving, drawing fire away from their position and toward the front of the facility where her marshals were making a stand. Reeves grabbed Maya's arm and pulled her in the opposite direction, toward the back fence where chain link bordered a drainage canal. "Can you climb?" he asked. Maya looked at the 8-foot fence topped with barbed wire and thought about every impossible thing she'd done in the last 24 hours. "I can now." They went over the fence as bullets sparked off metal behind them, Reeves boosting her up and then hauling himself over despite injuries that should have left him barely mobile. They dropped into the drainage canal just as a second explosion rocked the storage facility. The canal was dry this time of year, offering a concrete path that ran beneath the city's industrial district. Reeves led them east, away from the gunfire, moving with the certainty of someone who'd scouted escape routes long ago. "Wright's people will hold them off," he said, though Maya could hear the doubt in his voice. "We just need to get this evidence to someone who can protect it." "Who?" "If they've got people in the Federal Marshal Service, if they knew exactly where we'd be, then we go higher. We go public." Reeves pulled out his phone, checking for signal in the tunnel. "The video I recorded already has hundreds of thousands of views. We release this evidence the same way, dump it on the internet, send it to every news organization simultaneously, make it impossible to suppress." It was risky, maybe insane, but Maya couldn't see another option. How long will that take? I can upload to encrypted servers in maybe 20 minutes if we can find Wi-Fi. Reeves checked his phone again. But we need to survive those 20 minutes first. They emerged from the drainage tunnel near an abandoned industrial park, the same area where Reeves had hidden for months. But as they approached, Maya saw movement, armed figures positioning themselves on rooftops, in doorways, blocking every escape route. "It's a trap," she said. "It's been a trap since the moment we decided to fight back." Reeves scanned the area, calculating odds that looked impossible. But traps only work if you don't see them coming. He led them to a building that looked like it would collapse if you breathed on it wrong. But inside, Maya saw evidence of careful preparation. Supplies, equipment, multiple exit routes. Reeves had spent months preparing for this moment, creating fallback positions throughout the industrial district. "I can get online from here, ma'am," he said, powering up a laptop hidden beneath a tarp. "But they're going to know exactly where we are the moment I do. We'll have maybe 5 minutes before they breach." "Then make it count." Reeves's fingers flew across the keyboard, uploading files to servers scattered across multiple countries, sending encrypted packages to news organizations, creating torrents that would spread the evidence like wildfire. Maya watched the progress bar crawl upward. 30%, 40%, 50%. The first breach charge detonated on the building's east side. Tactical operators poured through the gap, moving with professional precision. Reeves didn't stop typing, didn't even look up as Maya positioned herself near the door with the only weapon she could find, a length of metal pipe. 70%, Reeves called out. Gunfire echoed through the building. The operators were clearing rooms, moving methodically closer. 80%. Maya heard footsteps on the stairs. They were out of time. 90%. Almost there. The door burst open and Maya swung the pipe with every ounce of strength she had. It connected with the first operator's weapon, knocking it aside, buying them 3 seconds. The operator recovered and aimed. Reeves tackled him from behind, using techniques that spoke of years of training. They went down in a tangle of limbs, but more operators were coming through the door. "Done," Reeves shouted. "It's uploaded." But Maya saw he was pinned, saw weapons rising, saw the calculation in the operator's eyes. They'd lost the evidence battle, but they could still eliminate the witnesses. Then the building shook with a different kind of explosion, this one from outside, followed by the distinctive sound of helicopters. Not the small news choppers that had been circling earlier, but heavy military transports. A voice boomed through loudspeakers. "This is General Patricia Morrison, United States Army. All personnel stand down immediately. This area is now under military jurisdiction." The operators hesitated, their advantage evaporating as real federal troops, not contractors, not bought agents, but actual military, fast roped down from helicopters and established a perimeter. Morrison. Maya remembered that name. Her father had mentioned her once, said she was one of the few officers in the Pentagon who couldn't be bought or intimidated. The operators withdrew, melting away before they could be identified and arrested. Within minutes, Maya and Reeves were surrounded by soldiers who actually looked like they were there to protect rather than eliminate them. General Morrison herself entered the building, a stern woman in her 60s with more medals than Maya could count. Her gaze swept over Reeves with recognition and something like relief. "Colonel Reeves, I've been looking for you for 7 months." "General?" Reeves tried to salute, winced, and settled for a nod. "Took you long enough." "I had to wait until I had proof that wouldn't get me relieved of command." Morrison pulled out a tablet showing news feeds. Every major network was running stories about leaked classified documents, about Operation Nightfall, about 3 powerful men whose careers were ending in real time. "Your evidence hit the internet 6 minutes ago. It's spreading faster than anyone can contain it." Maya felt her knees go weak. They'd done it. Against impossible odds, they'd actually done it. "Catherine Wright?" Reeves asked. "Alive. Injured in the explosion but stable. Her marshals held the line long enough for my people to arrive." Morrison's expression hardened. "Senator Hastings was arrested 30 minutes ago. General Carver is in federal custody. Brennan tried to run. He's been intercepted at Dulles Airport. Their people are scattering like rats off a sinking ship. Without their leadership, the conspiracy is collapsing. We're rounding up contractors, corrupt agents, everyone who participated." Morrison looked at Maya. "You're Thomas Chen's daughter." Yes, ma'am. Your father saved my life in Baghdad, took shrapnel that should have killed me and kept me breathing until medevac arrived. Morrison's voice softened slightly. I owed him a debt. I'm sorry it took me this long to pay it. Maya couldn't speak past the lump in her throat. Her father, dismissed, erased, forgotten, had saved the life of a general who'd just saved theirs. Morrison gestured to her aide. Get them medical attention and protective custody. Full security detail, no chances. These two are star witnesses in what's going to be the trial of the century. As medics approached, Maya finally allowed herself to feel the weight of the last 36 hours. The exhaustion, the fear, the desperate gambles that somehow kept paying off. She'd lost her job, her apartment, her entire life. But she'd gained something more valuable, the truth. Reeves caught her eye as medics began examining him. Your father would be proud. So would yours, Maya said, remembering the silent operators whose names had been erased from history. All of them would be. The medics were professional, efficient, checking for injuries that both Maya and Reeves had been ignoring in the rush to survive. Maya had bruised ribs from the explosion, cuts on her hands from the fence, and exhaustion that went bone deep. Reeves had reopened wounds from his earlier hospitalization, plus new injuries from the fight in the building. You both need to be hospitalized, the senior medic said firmly. Not Harbor General, Maya said immediately. Walter Reed, Morrison decided. Military facility, maximum security. Nobody gets near you without my clearance. They were loading Maya into a medical transport when her phone buzzed one last time. She'd expected another threat, another warning. Instead, it was a news alert. Dr. Marcus Aldridge placed on administrative leave pending investigation into patient care violations. Maya showed it to Reeves, and despite everything, the pain, the exhaustion, the weight of what still lay ahead, she smiled. It's just the beginning, Reeves said. The investigation, the trial, all of it. They're going to come at us with everything they have left. Let them. Maya settled back against the stretcher, feeling the security of federal soldiers surrounding the transport, knowing that for the first time in days, they were actually safe. We've got the truth on our side now. The transport pulled away from the industrial park, heading toward the military hospital where teams of doctors were already being briefed on their high-profile patients. Through the window, Maya could see news helicopters circling, reporters broadcasting live, the stories spreading across the country like wildfire. But she also saw something else. A lone figure, watching from a rooftop half a mile away, tracking their departure through binoculars. The figure lowered the binoculars, pulled out a phone, made a call. Maya's stomach clenched. Morrison had said they were rounding up the conspirators, but how many were there really? How deep did this go? They'd taken down Hastings, Carver, and Brennan, but what about their allies, their subordinates, the people who'd built careers on covering up the truth? At Walter Reed, they were whisked into a secure wing where armed guards checked every visitor and cameras monitored every corridor. Maya was given a private room with a window that overlooked the Capitol, where even now federal agents were serving warrants and making arrests. Catherine Wright arrived that evening, her arm in a sling, but her eyes sharp as ever. The evidence you uploaded is holding up under initial scrutiny. Financial forensics teams are verifying the transactions. Intelligence analysts are confirming the classified documents. Everything checks out. When's the trial? Reeves asked from his bed 2 doors down, connected to Wright's briefing via video link. Not for months. Maybe a year. This is going to be complicated. Classified information, national security implications, 3 defendants with unlimited resources for their defense. Wright's expression was grim. They're already assembling legal teams that cost more than most people make in a lifetime. They'll attack your credibility, your mental state, every decision you've made. They'll paint you as traitors, as delusional, as anything except what you really are. Which is what? Maya asked. Heroes who refuse to let powerful people bury the truth. Wright pulled up a chair, wincing as she moved her injured arm. But heroes don't always win in court. You need to understand that. Even with all this evidence, even with public opinion on our side, there's a chance they walk. Then we make sure they don't, Reeves said. How? We tell the truth, all of it. Every detail of Operation Nightfall, Every name, every mission. We make it impossible for a jury to see us as anything except soldiers who followed orders and then refused to be silenced when we realized those orders were corrupt. Wright studied them both. That means reliving every moment, going through your father's death, she looked at Maya, and going through the deaths of your unit, she looked at Reeves. It means having defense attorneys tear apart your memories, question your motives, make you doubt yourself on national television. I know, Maya said quietly. And you're willing to do that? My father spent 5 years being afraid of shadows because he knew too much. He died thinking his service meant nothing, that he'd be forgotten like he never existed. Maya's voice strengthened. I'm not letting that happen to him or anyone else who served in Silent Sentinel, whatever it takes. Wright nodded slowly. Then we start preparing tomorrow. Full depositions, witness prep, everything. It's going to be brutal. Good, Reeves said. Brutal means thorough. Thorough means nothing gets missed. After Wright left, Maya tried to sleep but found herself staring at the ceiling, replaying everything that had led to this moment. 48 hours ago, she'd been a suspended nurse with no prospects. Now she was a federal witness in a conspiracy case that would reshape American politics. Her phone buzzed, a call from an unknown number. Maya almost ignored it, but something made her answer. Ms. Chen. The voice was unfamiliar, male, with an accent she couldn't place. Congratulations on your victory. Very impressive. Who is this? Someone who wants you to understand something important. You took down 3 men. 3 visible, powerful men. But you didn't take down the system that put them in power. That system is still intact, still functioning, and it's already selecting their replacements. Maya's blood ran cold. What do you want? I want you to enjoy your moment in the sun. Testify at your trial. Bask in the glory of being a hero. But know that in 5 years, or 10, or 20, Operation Nightfall will happen again. Different names, different locations, but the same outcome. Because the system doesn't care about justice, it cares about power. We'll stop it again. The voice laughed, and it was the sound of someone who'd seen too much to believe in happy endings. Will you? You're exhausted, traumatized, and you haven't even begun to understand the cost of what you've done. Your career is over. Your anonymity is gone. You'll spend the rest of your life looking over your shoulder, wondering if every stranger is an ally or an enemy. Better than living with the alternative. Is it? Ask Colonel Reeves in a few years. Ask him if he thinks destroying 3 powerful men was worth destroying himself in the process. The voice paused. But I'm not here to discourage you. I'm here to make you an offer. I'm not interested. You will be. When the trial is over, when the media attention fades, when you realize that justice is just a word politicians use to make themselves feel better, you'll want another way to fight, a better way. The voice dropped lower. There are others like you, people who've seen the truth and can't unsee it, people who understand that sometimes the only way to beat the system is to operate outside it. You're talking about becoming exactly what they accused us of being. I'm talking about being effective instead of symbolic. But I can see you're not ready yet. You still believe in trials and evidence and the rule of law. The voice carried a note of something like pity. Call me when that changes, and it will change, Ms. Chen. Eventually it always does. The line went dead. Maya sat in the darkness of her hospital room, the phone trembling in her hand. She should report the call to Wright, to Morrison, to someone. But something held her back, maybe the exhaustion, maybe the fear that the voice was right. She'd won the battle. But the war? The war was just beginning. And somewhere in the shadows, people far more dangerous than Hastings or Carver or Brennan were already planning their next move. Maya looked out the window at the Capitol spread below, its monuments lit against the night sky, symbols of justice and democracy and all the things America claimed to stand for. But she'd learned in the past 2 days that symbols meant nothing without people willing to fight for them. Her phone buzzed again, this time with a message from Reeves. You okay? Your vitals just spiked on the monitoring system. Maya smiled despite herself. Even injured and medicated, the colonel was still watching out for her. She typed back. Fine, just thinking about what comes next. Nothing comes next until we heal. Doctor's orders. Since when do you follow orders? since I realized I'm finally on the right side of them. Maya set down her phone and closed her eyes, letting exhaustion finally claim her. Tomorrow would bring depositions and interrogations and the slow grind of building a legal case. But tonight, for the first time since her father's death, she could sleep knowing the truth was out there. The truth and the evidence to prove it. And in a city built on secrets and lies, that was something worth fighting for. But as Maya drifted off, she didn't see the figure watching from across the street, or the encrypted message being sent to powerful people in shadowy places. They have the evidence, proceeding to Contingency Protocol 7. The game wasn't over. It had merely evolved. Maya woke to the sound of raised voices outside her hospital room. She checked the clock, 3:47 a.m. She'd been asleep for less than 4 hours. Through the door, she could hear General Morrison's clipped tones cutting through someone's protests. "I don't care what your orders say. Nobody enters this wing without my personal authorization. Nobody." Maya slipped out of bed, ignoring the protests from her bruised ribs, and cracked open the door. Morrison stood in the corridor facing down two men in dark suits who were holding up federal credentials. "General, we're with the Department of Justice Inspector General's office. We have authority to interview the witnesses immediately." At 4 in the morning? Without counsel present? Morrison's hand rested casually on her sidearm. "I don't think so. This is a matter of national security. Everything's a matter of national security when you want to intimidate witnesses." Morrison stepped forward, and despite being a foot shorter than either man, she somehow dominated the space. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to leave. You're going to come back at a reasonable hour with proper authorization, and you're going to conduct any interviews with legal counsel present, or I'm going to have you arrested for witness tampering." The men exchanged glances. "The Attorney General will hear about this." "I'm counting on it. Now get out of my hospital." They left, but Maya saw the look they exchanged. This wasn't over, just postponed. Morrison waited until they were gone before noticing Maya in the doorway. "You should be resting." "So should you." Maya stepped into the corridor. Who were they really? Exactly who they claimed to be. Which is the problem? Morrison's expression was grim. The conspiracy went deeper than 3 men. There are people throughout the government who benefited from Operation Nightfall, who covered it up, who facilitated it. They're scrambling to contain the damage, which means they're going to try to discredit you and Reeves before you can testify. How? Any way they can. Challenge your mental state, dig up every mistake you've ever made, paint you as attention seekers or delusional or worse. Morrison started walking, gesturing for Maya to follow. That's why Wright needs to prep you thoroughly. The defense attorneys will be vicious, but the real threat is from people who don't want this to see trial at all. They reached Reeves's room to find him already awake and talking quietly with Catherine Wright, who looked like she hadn't slept at all. Her injured arm was in a fresh sling, and she was surrounded by tablets and laptops showing legal documents. "Good, you're both here," Wright said without preamble. "We have a development. Senator Hastings' attorney filed a motion this morning demanding immediate access to you for depositions. The judge granted it." "That was fast," Reeves said. "Too fast, which tells me Hastings still has friends on the bench." Wright pulled up a document. "The deposition is scheduled for 9 a.m. That gives us 5 hours to prepare, and it's not nearly enough." "What do they want?" Maya asked. "Everything. Your full statements, your knowledge of the evidence, your relationship with each other, your mental health history." Wright's expression was severe. "They're going to try to establish that you're either lying or incompetent, probably both." "Let them try," Reeves said. "It's not that simple. Hastings hired Marcus Thornton as lead counsel. If you follow federal cases, you know that name." Wright's jaw tightened. "He's never lost. Ever. He's destroyed more credible witnesses than you can count. And he does it by finding the one thing that makes a jury doubt everything else you say." Maya felt her stomach drop. "What's our one thing?" "For you? The fact that you were suspended from your job for insubordination hours before you helped a patient escape federal custody. For Reeves? 7 months of documented mental instability, living on the streets, and a history of PTSD that Thornton will twist into paranoid delusions. But we have the evidence. Evidence that mysteriously appeared after months of you claiming it existed, but being unable to produce it. Evidence that was conveniently hidden in your dead father's watch. Wright held up a hand before Maya could protest. I'm not saying I don't believe you. I'm telling you what Thornton will say. And he'll say it so convincingly that even people who want to believe you will start to doubt. The room fell silent. Outside, dawn was beginning to break over Washington, painting the sky in shades of gray that matched Maya's mood. So what do we do? She finally asked. We tell the truth. Clearly, consistently, without embellishment. Wright began distributing documents. I'm going to ask you questions similar to what Thornton will ask. Some of them will be uncomfortable. Some will make you angry. You need to stay calm, stay focused, and never, ever speculate or guess. If you don't know something, you say, I don't know. If you don't remember, you say, I don't recall. You do not fill in gaps or try to be helpful. Understood? They spent the next 4 hours in brutal preparation. Wright hammered them with questions, attacked their credibility, twisted their words, and forced them to relive every painful moment of the past week. By the time Morrison's aide arrived to escort them to the deposition, Maya felt like she'd already testified in a hostile trial. The deposition was held in a secure conference room in the federal courthouse, with armed marshals stationed outside and cameras recording every word. Marcus Thornton was exactly what Maya expected. 60, silver-haired, with the calm confidence of someone who'd spent decades destroying people's lives and sleeping soundly afterward. Ms. Chen, he began, his voice pleasant, almost friendly. Thank you for being here today. I know this has been a difficult time for you. Maya recognized the trap immediately. He wanted her to agree, to establish rapport, so that later when he turned hostile, the jury would see her as inconsistent. I'm here because it's my legal obligation. Thornton's smile didn't waver. Of course. Now, you were suspended from your position at Harbor General Hospital on the night of October 27th. Is that correct? Yes. And the reason given for your suspension was insubordination and creating a dangerous situation with a patient, correct? That's what they claimed. They claimed? You're suggesting the hospital administration lied about the reasons for your suspension? Wright cut in. That mischaracterizes her testimony. She stated what they claimed, which is factually accurate. Thornton nodded, unruffled. Let me rephrase. Ms. Chen, did you or did you not countermand direct orders from Dr. Marcus Aldridge, the attending physician? Maya took a breath. I provided medical care to a patient who was dying. Dr. Aldridge was not providing appropriate treatment. But you're not a doctor, are you? You're a nurse, and Dr. Aldridge has been a practicing emergency physician for 20 years. A patient's condition doesn't improve based on the credentials of the person ignoring them. Wright shot her a warning look. Don't get combative. Don't let him provoke you. Maya swallowed her anger and modulated her tone. I provided standard emergency care for a patient in cardiac arrest, she said more calmly. That's within my scope of practice as a registered nurse. Thornton made a note. And after providing this care, you helped the patient, Colonel Reeves, escape from federal custody. Is that accurate? I helped him avoid being killed by people pretending to be federal agents. You determined they were pretending to be federal agents how? Based on your extensive experience in law enforcement? Maya felt the trap closing. If she said yes, she'd be lying and he'd prove it. If she said no, she'd seem incompetent to judge the situation. She chose the third option Wright had drilled into her. Based on the assessment of Colonel Sarah Vance, who was actually in law enforcement and identified them as contractors rather than legitimate federal agents. Thornton's smile tightened. That answer had deflected his trap. Let's talk about your father, Thomas Chen. You believe he was murdered, correct? I know he was murdered. Based on what evidence? The medical examiner ruled his death a natural heart attack. Based on what Colonel Reeves told me about potassium chloride injections that mimic cardiac arrest. So you have no direct evidence. You're relying entirely on the word of a man who spent 7 months living on the streets, suffering from PTSD and possible psychotic delusions. Wright objected. Assumes facts, not in evidence. Colonel Reeves's medical records show PTSD, but no diagnosis of psychotic delusions. Yet he believed government agents were trying to kill him, correct? That's textbook paranoid delusion. It's not paranoia if they're actually trying to kill you, Reeves said quietly from his seat. Thornton turned to him with barely concealed satisfaction. Ah, Colonel Reeves. Thank you for that outburst. It saves me the trouble of establishing your mental state. The deposition continued for 6 more hours, with Thornton methodically dissecting every decision, every action, every belief. He questioned Maya's judgment, Reeves's sanity, the authenticity of the evidence, and the timing of its discovery. By the time they broke for the day, Maya felt like she'd been flayed alive. You did well, Wright said afterward, though her expression suggested otherwise. Better than expected, actually, but Thornton got what he wanted. Which is? Reeves asked. Enough inconsistencies and ambiguities to create reasonable doubt. He doesn't need to prove you're lying, just that you might be mistaken, or confused, or influenced by each other. Wright gathered her materials. The good news is that the evidence itself is holding up. Financial forensics confirm the transactions are real. Intelligence analysts verified the classified documents are authentic. We have a strong case. But, Maya heard the unspoken caveat. But cases aren't won on evidence alone. They're won on credibility. And Thornton just spent 6 hours making you look like a suspended nurse with a grudge and a mentally unstable veteran with paranoid tendencies. Wright's phone buzzed. She checked it, and her expression shifted. We have another problem. She pulled up a news feed showing breaking coverage. Dr. Marcus Aldridge was holding a press conference outside Harbor General Hospital, flanked by lawyers and looking appropriately somber. This is deeply troubling, Aldridge was saying. Ms. Chen was a troubled employee who repeatedly overstepped her authority and endangered patients. Her conspiracy theories about Colonel Reeves being some kind of secret operative are frankly delusional. The man was clearly suffering from severe mental illness, and rather than getting him help, she enabled his delusions and helped him evade proper psychiatric care. Maya's hands clenched into fists as Aldridge continued, painting her as unstable and Reeves as a victim of her manipulation. He's coordinating with Thornton, Wright said. This isn't coincidence. They're building a public narrative that makes you the villain before you even get to trial. Can we respond? Maya asked. Not without seeming defensive, which is exactly what they want. Wright was already typing messages. But I can do something better. I can accelerate the investigation into Aldridge himself. What investigation? Wright's smile was predatory. The one that started when I subpoenaed Harbor General's financial records and found some very interesting discrepancies. It seems Dr. Aldridge has been billing for procedures that were never performed, accepting kickbacks from pharmaceutical companies, and most relevantly, he received a substantial payment from an offshore account 3 days after your father died. Maya's breath caught. You think Aldridge was involved? I think someone paid him a lot of money around the same time Silent Sentinel members started dying. That's worth investigating. Wright made another call. I'm having federal agents serve a search warrant on Aldridge's office and home within the hour. Let's see how he likes being in the spotlight. The raid on Aldridge's property made national news that evening. Federal agents carried out boxes of documents, computers, and financial records while cameras broadcast every moment. Aldridge's lawyer issued statements about harassment and overreach, but the damage was done. The smug physician who'd been painting Maya as unstable was now under federal investigation himself. But the real bombshell came 2 days later when Wright called an emergency meeting at Walter Reed. She arrived with General Morrison and 2 FBI agents Maya didn't recognize, all of them looking like they'd just uncovered something massive. We found the connection, Wright said without preamble. Dr. Aldridge received payments totaling $3 million over the past 5 years from a shell corporation owned by General Carver. We've traced similar payments to 6 other medical professionals across the country, all of them treating or having access to Silent Sentinel members. Maya felt sick. They paid doctors to kill their own patients? Not directly. They paid them to ignore symptoms, delay treatment, miss diagnoses. Thomas Chen complained of chest pain 3 times in the month before he died. Aldridge's notes indicate he recommended rest and stress reduction. No EKG, no cardiac workup, nothing that might have caught the problem before it killed him. That's murder, Reeves said quietly. It's negligence at minimum, conspiracy to commit murder, if we can prove intent. Wright pulled up more documents, But here's where it gets interesting. Aldridge kept records, detailed records of every payment, every instruction, every patient he was told to manage. He was either incredibly stupid or incredibly paranoid about being set up as a fall guy. He kept insurance, Morrison said. Smart. Criminals always think they're the one who won't get caught, so they keep evidence to protect themselves from their co-conspirators. Which means we now have documentary proof linking Carver directly to the deaths of Silent Sentinel members. Wright's expression was fierce. Aldridge is cooperating fully in exchange for a reduced sentence. He's willing to testify that Carver gave him specific instructions on how to handle Thomas Chen's medical care, or rather, how to mishandle it. Maya wanted to feel vindicated, but all she felt was rage. Her father had sought medical help, had trusted a doctor to care for him, and that doctor had been paid to let him die. "When do we arrest Carver?" Reeves asked. "He's already in custody, but now we're adding murder charges." Wright checked her watch. "The arraignment is in 2 hours. I thought you might want to be there." The federal courthouse was surrounded by media and protesters when they arrived, some supporting the defendants, claiming government overreach and persecution of patriots, others demanding justice for the soldiers who'd been betrayed. Maya and Reeves were escorted through a side entrance, avoiding the cameras, but she could feel the weight of public attention like a physical force. The courtroom was packed with reporters, lawyers, and observers. Senator Hastings sat at the defense table looking diminished without his usual entourage of aides and sycophants. General Carver was in military dress uniform, stripped of all insignia, his posture rigid with barely controlled fury. Deputy Director Brennan looked pale and smaller than his official photos, like a man watching his entire life collapse in real time. Judge Margaret Foster presided, a stern woman in her 70s who'd built a reputation for not tolerating nonsense from anyone. She listened to the prosecution's amended charges with an expression that gave nothing away. "Murder in the first degree," she read aloud. "Conspiracy to commit murder. Obstruction of justice. Witness tampering." Her gaze swept over the defendants. "These are extraordinarily serious charges against men who've served in positions of public trust." Marcus Thornton stood. "Your Honor, these charges are nothing more than a witch hunt designed to persecute men who dedicated their lives to protecting this country. The so-called evidence is fabricated, the witnesses are unreliable, and the entire prosecution is built on the fantasies of a mentally disturbed homeless man and a disgraced nurse with a personal vendetta." "I've reviewed the evidence, Mr. Thornton. It seems quite substantial." "Doctored documents, Your Honor. Digital files that could have been created by anyone. My clients are victims of an elaborate frame job." Judge Foster turned to Wright. "Counselor, you have something to add?" Wright stood with the measured confidence of someone holding all the cards. "Your Honor, we have documentary evidence, financial records, witness testimony, and most importantly, we have Dr. Marcus Aldridge's detailed records of instructions he received from General Carver regarding the medical care, or deliberate lack thereof, provided to Thomas Chen and 3 other Silent Sentinel members. Dr. Aldridge is prepared to testify in exchange for a cooperation agreement." The courtroom erupted. Reporters were typing frantically, observers were gasping, and the defense table looked like it had been hit by a bomb. Carver's attorney was on his feet, objecting. Hastings' lawyer was demanding to see the evidence, and Brennan looked like he might vomit. Judge Foster's gavel cracked like thunder. "Order! I will have order in this courtroom." The chaos subsided, but the damage was done. The narrative had shifted from delusional whistleblower to documented conspiracy, and everyone in the room knew it. "Bail?" Judge Foster asked. "The government requests remand, Your Honor. These defendants have significant resources, international connections, and have already demonstrated willingness to harm witnesses. They are extreme flight risks." Thornton argued vehemently for bail, citing his client's service records, their ties to the community, their presumption of innocence. But Judge Foster was unmoved. "Remand granted. Trial is set for," she checked her calendar, "8 months from today. Defendants will remain in federal custody until trial." The gavel fell, and with it the last remnants of the defendant's freedom. Carver's face went purple with rage as marshals approached to take him back into custody. Hastings sat frozen, the reality of prison finally penetrating his armor of privilege. Brennan put his head in his hands and wept. Maya watched them being led away in handcuffs and felt none of the satisfaction she'd expected. These men had killed her father, had murdered soldiers who'd served faithfully, had corrupted everything they touched. Their punishment was just necessary, but it didn't bring anyone back. Outside the courthouse, Wright held a brief press conference that was broadcast live across every major network. Today, justice took a significant step forward. 3 men who betrayed their oaths, who murdered American soldiers to protect their own interests, are now facing the consequences of their actions. This investigation is ongoing, and we expect additional charges and arrests in the coming weeks. Reporters shouted questions, but Wright ignored them all except one. What about the allegations that your witnesses are unreliable? Wright's smile was cold. Colonel Daniel Reeves and Ms. Maya Chen risked everything to bring the truth to light. They were attacked, hunted, and nearly killed by people trying to silence them. Their courage in the face of overwhelming danger speaks louder than any character assassination attempt by defense attorneys. The American people can judge their credibility when this case goes to trial. Back at Walter Reed, Maya finally allowed herself to collapse. The adrenaline that had carried her through depositions and arraignments was gone, leaving only exhaustion and the dull ache of old injuries. Morrison had assigned a permanent security detail. 2 agents would be with her at all times until the trial concluded. "It's really happening," she said to Reeves when they had a rare moment of privacy in the hospital's secure common area. "They're actually going to prison. If the trial goes our way, 8 months is a long time for Thornton to build a defense." "You think we'll lose?" Reeves was quiet for a moment. "I think we've already won the part that matters. The truth is out. The evidence is public. Even if some technicality gets them acquitted, everyone knows what they did. Their careers are over, their reputations destroyed. They'll spend the rest of their lives as the men who murdered soldiers to line their pockets." "That's not justice." "No, but it's something." Reeves looked out the window at the city below. "Your father used to say that sometimes you don't get justice, you just get the truth. And if you're lucky, the truth is enough to stop it from happening again." Maya's phone buzzed with a news alert. Harbor General Hospital had announced the termination of Dr. Marcus Aldridge, pending criminal charges. The hospital board had issued a formal apology to Maya and offered to reinstate her with back pay and a promotion. She showed the alert to Reeves, who smiled grimly. "They're covering their asses now that it's politically safe. Where was that apology when they suspended you?" "Doesn't matter, I'm not going back." "No? I spent 3 years being dismissed and ignored by people like Aldridge. Why would I go back to that?" Maya pocketed her phone. "Wright offered me a job with her office. Victim witness advocate. Help people navigate the legal system, make sure their voices are heard." "You'd be good at that." "What about you? What happens after the trial?" Reeves leaned back in his chair, and for the first time since Maya had met him, he looked almost relaxed. "Morrison offered to help me disappear again. New identity, new location, witness protection for as long as I need it. Or I can stay and try to rebuild some kind of life here. Which are you leaning toward?" "I spent 7 months running and hiding. I'm tired of being invisible." Reeves met her eyes. Silent Sentinel was erased from history. Maybe it's time someone remembered we existed. Before Maya could respond, Morrison appeared in the doorway with an expression that made Maya's stomach drop. "We have a situation," the general said. "Deputy Director Brennan was found dead in his cell 30 minutes ago. Apparent suicide." The word hung in the air like poison. Maya and Reeves exchanged looks. They both knew what apparent suicide really meant. "Someone got to him," Reeves said. "We're investigating, but preliminary findings show he hanged himself with a bedsheet. No signs of struggle, no indication of foul play." Morrison's voice was carefully neutral. "Convenient timing, though. He was scheduled to give a full deposition tomorrow." "Let me guess," Maya said bitterly. "He was going to name names. Tell us who else was involved." According to his attorney, yes. Brennan was negotiating a cooperation agreement in exchange for testimony about other officials who knew about Operation Nightfall and helped cover it up. Morrison's jaw tightened. Now that testimony dies with him. "Unless he left something behind," Reeves said. "Brennan was CIA. He'd have kept insurance, same as Aldridge. His lawyers claim he had documents, but they haven't been able to locate them. Either Brennan was bluffing or someone found them first." Morrison pulled up a chair. This changes the trial dynamics. Hastings and Carver will argue that Brennan was the mastermind, that they were just following his intelligence assessments. With Brennan dead, he can't contradict them. Maya felt the ground shifting beneath her again. They'd won the battle at the courthouse, but the war was adapting, evolving, finding new ways to protect itself. "What do we do?" she asked. "We move forward. We prepare for trial. We make sure Hastings and Carver don't walk because Brennan gave them a convenient scapegoat." Morrison's phone buzzed. She checked it, and her expression went flat. "And we deal with our newest problem. Someone just leaked classified portions of the evidence to the media. The judge is considering a gag order and possibly moving the trial due to publicity concerns." "Who leaked it?" Reeves asked. "Unknown, but it was done professionally through multiple channels simultaneously. Someone wants this case tried in the court of public opinion rather than a courtroom." "Because they think we'll lose in court," Maya said quietly. Morrison didn't contradict her. Instead, she stood and walked to the window, looking out at the media circus that had transformed Walter Reed's perimeter into a carnival of cameras and protesters. "There are powerful people who are very nervous right now," Morrison said. "Brennan's death sends a message: cooperate and you die. The leaked evidence sends another message: we can poison the jury pool and get this case thrown out. They're fighting back with everything they have." "Then we fight harder," Reeves said. "With what? You're two witnesses against a machine that's been operating for decades. Yes, you've exposed part of it. Yes, you've taken down 3 men, but the machine is still there, still running, and it's trying to crush you before you can do any more damage." Maya thought about the voice on the phone, the one offering her a different way to fight. For the first time, she understood the temptation, to stop playing by rules the other side ignored, to become what they feared instead of what they dismissed. But then she thought about her father, about the scars on his hands and the oath he'd taken. He'd believed in the system even when the system failed him. He'd followed the rules even when his enemies didn't. And in the end, he'd hidden evidence in a broken watch because he believed that someday someone would use those rules to make things right. "We don't need to be stronger than the machine," Maya said. "We just need to be more persistent. They're used to people giving up, backing down, disappearing. We're not going to do that." Morrison studied her with something like approval. "Your father said almost exactly the same thing to me in Baghdad, right before he walked into enemy fire to save my life." "Did it work?" "I'm here, aren't I?" Morrison's smile was grim. "All right, we play this smart. Wright is filing motions to seal the leaked evidence and sequester the jury. We're tightening security, no more unauthorized visitors, no more unsecured calls. And we're going to find out who leaked that information and make sure they face consequences." "What about Brennan's insurance?" Reeves asked. "If he had documents, they're somewhere. Dead men don't usually destroy evidence. They hide it where it can be found if something happens to them." "I'll put a team on it, but don't get your hopes up. If Brennan was smart, and he hid it where only he could retrieve it." After Morrison left, Maya and Reeves sat in silence, processing the latest developments. Every victory seemed to come with a new complication. Every step forward revealed another obstacle. "You okay?" Reeves asked finally. "No, but I don't think I'm supposed to be." Maya looked at her hands, remembering the blood on them from the night she'd saved Reeves's life in the ER. "We're winning, right? The evidence is out, the defendants are in custody, the truth is public. So why does it feel like we're still losing?" "Because exposure isn't the same as justice. We've torn off the bandage, but the wound's still there." Reeves shifted in his chair, his injuries clearly bothering him. "The trial will decide if we actually won or just died more slowly." Maya's phone buzzed, a message from Catherine Wright. "Emergency meeting tomorrow, 800. New evidence emerged. You're going to want to see this." She showed it to Reeves, who raised an eyebrow. "New evidence? From where?" Only one way to find out. But as Maya tried to sleep that night, she couldn't shake the feeling that they were standing on the edge of something massive. Brennan's death, the leaked evidence, Wright's cryptic message. It all pointed to something bigger than 3 corrupt officials. And somewhere in the darkness, someone was watching, waiting, planning their next move. The game had changed again. The question was whether Maya and Reeves could change with it. Wright's office at 8 a.m. was packed with people Maya didn't recognize. FBI agents, forensic accountants, intelligence analysts, all looking like they'd been working through the night. The prosecutor herself had dark circles under her eyes, but an energy that suggested she'd found something major. Brennan didn't kill himself, Wright said without preamble. Or rather, he did, but not the way everyone thinks. She pulled up security footage on the main screen showing Brennan's cell in the Federal Detention Center. The timestamp read 11:47 p.m., roughly 30 minutes before guards found his body. "Watch carefully," Wright said. The footage showed Brennan sitting on his bunk, then suddenly standing and moving to the cell door. He appeared to be listening to something, then nodded as if receiving instructions. He walked to his bed, methodically tore a sheet into strips, and fashioned a noose with practiced efficiency. No hesitation, no second thoughts, just mechanical execution of a task. "That's not the behavior of a suicidal man," one of the FBI agents said. "That's someone following orders." Wright froze the frame on Brennan's face. His expression was blank, almost peaceful. "Toxicology came back an hour ago. They found traces of a compound in his system, a derivative of scopolamine combined with a synthetic hypnotic. In the right dosage, it makes subjects highly suggestible while maintaining basic motor function." Maya felt her skin crawl. Someone drugged him and told him to kill himself? Someone with access to the detention center, knowledge of pharmacology, and the ability to deliver a controlled substance without detection. Wright pulled up another file. "We reviewed visitor logs. Brennan had one visitor yesterday afternoon, a woman claiming to be from his attorney's office. The ID she showed was legitimate, the credentials checked out, but when we contacted the law firm, they had no record of sending anyone." "Professional operator," Reeves said. "Same people who've been trying to kill us." "Probably. But here's where it gets interesting." Wright clicked to a new screen showing financial records. Before Brennan died, he did one final thing. He transferred access codes to a secure server from his personal email to an automated dead man's switch. If he didn't check in every 12 hours, the switch would trigger and dump the entire contents of that server to multiple recipients. "Including you," Morrison guessed. "Including me, the New York Times, the Washington Post, and WikiLeaks." Brennan might have been dirty, but he wasn't stupid. He knew they'd come for him, so he made sure his death would cost them. Wright pulled up the server contents, and the room fell silent as people absorbed what they were seeing. Documents, thousands of them. Classified operations spanning 3 decades. Financial transactions totaling billions of dollars. Names of officials in every branch of government who'd participated in or benefited from programs like Operation Nightfall. It wasn't just a conspiracy. It was a system. "This is bigger than 3 men," one of the analysts said quietly. "This is institutional." Wright nodded grimly. Brennan documented everything, every operation he ran, every order he received, every politician who knew what was happening and looked the other way. He was building insurance against exactly what happened to him. "How many people are implicated?" Maya asked. 47 names so far, and we're still analyzing. Senators, generals, agency directors, defense contractors. Some of them are retired, some are dead, but 12 are currently serving in positions of power. Wright's expression was steel. "This is going to reshape the entire government." Morrison leaned forward. "What's your play?" "I'm convening a grand jury, not just for Hastings and Carver, for everyone Brennan's files implicate. We're going to expose the whole network, prosecute everyone we can, and force institutional reforms that make sure this never happens again." Wright looked at Maya and Reeves. "But I need you to testify, not just about Operation Nightfall, but about the entire system, about how it operates, how it protects itself, how it eliminates threats." "We don't know all of that," Reeves said. "You know your piece of it, and there are others, people like you who were used and discarded. Brennan's files include contact information for 17 other silent Sentinel operators who were officially declared dead but are actually in hiding." Wright pulled up a list of names, and Reeves's breath caught. "Marcus Sullivan, James Rodriguez, David Park." His voice cracked. "These men are alive?" "According to Brennan's records, yes. He tracked them as potential threats, kept tabs on their locations in case he needed to eliminate them. But now we can bring them in, offer them protection, let them add their testimony to yours." Maya saw tears in Reeves's eyes, the first real emotion she'd seen break through his controlled exterior. Men he'd thought were dead, brothers he'd mourned, were alive and could finally come home. "When do we start?" he asked. "Tomorrow. I'm filing charges today, announcing the investigation at a press conference this afternoon. After that, every news organization in the country will be covering this story, and the people implicated will be scrambling to save themselves." Wright's smile was predatory. "Some will try to flee. Some will try to destroy evidence, and some will try to cooperate in exchange for leniency. We're going to use all of it." The press conference was held on the steps of the Department of Justice, with Wright flanked by the Attorney General, the FBI Director, and General Morrison. Cameras from around the world broadcast every word as Wright outlined the scope of the investigation. For decades, individuals in positions of trust have abused their power to conduct illegal operations, eliminate witnesses, and enrich themselves at the expense of American lives. Today, we are announcing charges against 12 current officials and initiating investigations into 35 others. This conspiracy resulted in the deaths of at least 47 American soldiers and operatives, cost taxpayers billions of dollars, and corrupted our national security apparatus at the highest levels. The reporters erupted with questions, but Wright continued speaking over them. "We are also announcing a victim compensation fund for the families of soldiers who were killed as part of this conspiracy. These families deserve acknowledgement, financial support, and most importantly, the truth about what happened to their loved ones." Maya watched from a secure location inside the building, seeing her father's name appear on the screen among the victims. Thomas Chen, Sergeant First Class, Army Special Operations, killed in the line of duty while investigating corruption. The official record was finally being corrected. Her phone rang, a number she didn't recognize. Against her better judgment, she answered. "Miss Chen, this is Harrison Whitmore." Maya's hand tightened on the phone. The hospital board member who'd demanded she be fired, who'd called her father's sacrifice meaningless. "I have nothing to say to you, Mr. Whitmore. Please, just listen. I'm calling to apologize." His voice was shaking. "I didn't know. I swear to you, I didn't know about any of this. When Dr. Aldridge told me that homeless man was dangerous, when he said you were unstable, I believed him. I trusted his medical judgment. And now I know I was complicit in attempted murder. The FBI has been questioning me about my relationship with Aldridge, about payments I made to hospital administrators who received kickbacks from pharmaceutical companies Aldridge was connected to. I'm probably going to prison, and I deserve it." Maya could have gloated, could have told him exactly what she thought of his apology. Instead, she found herself thinking about her father's words. "Anger is easy. Forgiveness is brave." "You were a coward," she said quietly. "You valued money and connections over human lives. You treated people like they were disposable. I know. But you're calling me now, which means some part of you knows it was wrong. That's something, I guess." Maya took a breath. "I don't forgive you. Maybe someday I will, but not today. But I hope you use whatever time you have left to be better than you were." She hung up before he could respond, and found Reeves watching her with an unreadable expression. "That was generous," he said. "That was exhausting, but my father would have done the same." Maya pocketed her phone. "He believed people could change. I'm trying to believe it too." Over the next 3 weeks, the investigation exploded across every major outlet. Officials resigned in disgrace. Others were arrested trying to flee the country, and a few, very few, chose cooperation over self-preservation. The grand jury worked around the clock, hearing testimony from dozens of witnesses as Wright built her case. Maya testified for 6 hours, walking the jury through everything from her father's death to the confrontation in the storage facility. She showed them the watch, explained how evidence had been hidden, described the attempts on their lives. And she never wavered, never let Marcus Thornton's cross-examination shake her from the truth. Reeves testified for 3 days, providing military expertise that only someone who'd lived through these operations could offer. He explained how Silent Sentinel had been used, how they'd discovered the conspiracy, how they'd been systematically eliminated. And when Thornton tried to paint him as delusional, Reeves calmly pulled out his own medical records showing treatment for PTSD, but also psychological evaluations confirming he was competent and credible. But the most powerful testimony came from Dr. Marcus Aldridge himself, who took the stand pale and shaking and admitted everything. How Carver had recruited him, how much he'd been paid, how he'd deliberately mismanaged Thomas Chen's care, knowing it would likely result in his death. The courtroom was silent except for the sound of people weeping as Aldridge described 3 other cases where he'd done the same thing. "I told myself it was for national security," Aldridge said, his voice barely above a whisper. "That these men knew too much, that letting them die was protecting the country. But the truth is I did it for money. $3 million to murder 4 men who trusted me to heal them." Thornton couldn't cross-examine his way out of that confession. He tried, spent 2 hours attempting to establish that Aldridge was lying to reduce his own sentence, but the financial records backed up every word. The jury saw the transactions, saw the instructions Carver had sent, saw the medical records showing Aldridge's deliberate negligence. The trial of Richard Hastings and James Carver lasted 4 months. Every day brought new revelations, new witnesses, new evidence of corruption so deep it had become normalized. Defense attorneys argued their clients had acted in good faith, that classified operations required difficult decisions, that hindsight was unfair. But Wright systematically destroyed every argument. She showed that Operation Nightfall hadn't been about national security. It had been about creating a threat to justify defense spending that enriched the defendants. She proved they'd known the terrorist cell was manufactured, that they'd sent soldiers to die covering up their crimes, that they'd murdered witnesses to protect themselves. The jury deliberated for 3 days. Maya and Reeves waited in a conference room at Walter Reed, neither able to sleep or eat or think about anything except the verdict. Morrison sat with them, silent support that spoke louder than words. Wright called every few hours with updates. The jury had asked for financial records, had requested testimony transcripts, had sent questions to the judge. Then, on the 3rd day, Wright called with a single word: verdict. The courtroom was packed beyond capacity, with overflow crowds watching on screens in adjacent rooms. Maya and Reeves were given seats in the front row, surrounded by marshals and Morrison's personal security detail. Across the aisle sat families of other Silent Sentinel members, some whose loved ones were confirmed dead, others who'd learned in recent weeks that their sons and husbands and fathers were alive and in protective custody. Hastings and Carver were brought in, both looking diminished by months in detention. The senator's expensive suit couldn't hide the weight he'd lost, the tremor in his hands. The general's military bearing had crumbled into the posture of a man facing consequences for the first time in his life. Judge Foster entered, and the room rose as one. She surveyed the packed courtroom with an expression Maya couldn't read, then nodded to the jury foreman. "Has the jury reached a verdict?" "We have, Your Honor." The foreman stood, holding papers that would reshape American history. He was an older Blacksman, a veteran himself, according to the jury selection records, and his voice was steady as he read. "In the case of the United States versus Richard Hastings, on the charge of conspiracy to commit murder, we find the defendant guilty." The courtroom erupted. Judge Foster's gavel cracked repeatedly, demanding order, but the relief and vindication couldn't be silenced. Maya felt tears streaming down her face as the foreman continued. "On the charge of murder in the first degree in the death of Thomas Chen, we find the defendant guilty. On the charge of obstruction of justice, guilty. On all charges of financial crimes, guilty." Hastings slumped in his chair, his face ashen. His attorneys were already preparing appeals, but everyone knew it was over. "In the case of the United States versus James Carver," the foreman continued, and read through identical guilty verdicts on every count. Carver took it standing, rigid military posture to the end, but Maya saw his hands shaking. Judge Foster waited for silence before speaking. "Sentencing will be held in 2 weeks. Until then, the defendants will remain in federal custody. This court is adjourned." The gavel fell one final time, and with it, the last remnants of the conspiracy's power. Outside the courthouse, Wright held another press conference, this one triumphant rather than grimly determined. "Justice has been served today, not just for Thomas Chen and the other members of Silent Sentinel, but for every American who expects their government to act with integrity. These convictions send a clear message. No one is above the law, no matter their position or power." Maya didn't attend the press conference. Instead, she and Reeves were escorted to a private room where 17 men waited, the surviving members of Silent Sentinel who'd come out of hiding to testify and finally reunite with the brother they'd thought was dead. The reunion was everything Maya expected: tears, embraces, laughter mixed with grief for those who hadn't survived. These men had spent years living as ghosts, convinced they'd die forgotten and erased. Now they could reclaim their names, their service, their lives. Marcus Sullivan, a stocky man in his 50s with scars that told stories of violence survived, grabbed Reeves in a bear hug that lifted him off the ground. "You crazy bastard! We thought you were dead." "I was dead. Spent 7 months making sure everyone believed it." Reeves's voice was thick with emotion. "How long have you been running?" 3 years. Ever since Rodriguez contacted me saying people from the unit were dying." Sullivan released him and turned to Maya. "You're Chen's daughter. I can see it in your eyes, same fire he had." "You knew my father?" "He saved my life in Fallujah. Carried me 3 miles through hostile territory after I took a round to the leg." Sullivan's expression softened. "He was the best of us. I'm sorry for your loss." Maya found herself embraced by men she'd never met but who felt like family, her father's brothers in ways that transcended blood. They told her stories she'd never heard, showed her photos she'd never seen, painted a picture of Thomas Chen as a hero rather than the broken man she'd watched die. "He was scared at the end," one of them said gently, "but not for himself. He was scared they'd come for you next. That's why he hid the evidence so well. He wanted to make sure if anything happened to him, you'd be able to defend yourself." Maya realized her father's final act hadn't been despair or surrender. It had been protection, ensuring she'd have the tools to fight back if the conspiracy came for her. And it had worked. 2 weeks later, Judge Foster handed down sentences that made headlines around the world. Richard Hastings received life in prison without possibility of parole for his role in murdering 4 American soldiers. James Carver received the same, with additional years for his specific involvement in Thomas Chen's death. The other officials implicated in Brennan's files received sentences ranging from 10 years to life, depending on their level of involvement. Dr. Marcus Aldridge, in exchange for his cooperation, received 25 years with possibility of parole after 15. It was more lenient than Maya wanted, but Wright assured her it was necessary to secure his testimony against the others. Harbor General Hospital underwent a complete administrative overhaul, with the board of directors replaced and new protocols established for patient care and staff protection. They formally apologized to Maya in a public ceremony, offering her not just reinstatement, but the position of Director of Patient Advocacy, a newly created role with authority to investigate complaints and override physicians when necessary. Maya declined. Instead, she accepted Catherine Wright's offer to join the Department of Justice as a victim witness advocate, using her medical training and lived experience to help others navigate the legal system. Her first case was establishing a support network for families of Silent Sentinel members, ensuring they received the benefits and recognition their loved ones had earned. Reeves chose a different path. General Morrison helped him establish a foundation dedicated to protecting whistleblowers in the military and intelligence communities, a place where people who discovered corruption could report it safely without fear of retaliation. The foundation was named for Thomas Chen, ensuring his sacrifice would be remembered. 6 months after the verdict, Maya stood at Arlington National Cemetery as her father's remains were reinterred with full military honors. The Army had corrected his service record, acknowledging his true role in special operations and awarding him posthumously the Distinguished Service Cross for his actions in Baghdad and his investigation into Operation Nightfall. General Morrison herself presented the flag to Maya, her voice carrying across the assembled crowd. Sergeant First Class Thomas Chen served his country with honor, courage, and integrity. He gave his life protecting the truth and ensuring that those who corrupted our military would face justice. America owes him a debt we can never fully repay. The honor guard fired their salute, and Maya watched the flag fold with precision that spoke of respect and recognition. Around her stood the surviving members of Silent Sentinel in dress uniform, finally able to acknowledge their service publicly. Reeves stood at attention beside her, his own medals glinting in the afternoon sun. "He'd be proud of you," Reeves said quietly as the ceremony concluded. "He'd be proud of all of us." Maya clutched the flag to her chest, feeling the weight of everything it represented. "We finished what he started. No. Reeves's expression was thoughtful. We finished this battle. The war he was fighting, the one against corruption and abuse of power, that continues. But now we know how to fight it. Maya understood what he meant. The system that had enabled Operation Nightfall still existed, just damaged and exposed rather than destroyed. There would be other conspiracies, other powerful people who thought themselves above accountability. But there would also be people like her and Reeves, people who refused to look away or stay silent. 1 year after the verdict, Maya received a letter from Senator Hastings, forwarded through multiple security checks. She almost threw it away unread, but curiosity won out. The letter was handwritten, barely legible, and filled with rambling justifications for his actions. But near the end, one paragraph stood out. You destroyed my life because you couldn't accept that sometimes good men must do terrible things for the greater good. You and Reeves will be forgotten in 5 years, while I'll be remembered as a senator who served his country for 3 decades. History will vindicate me, not you. Maya smiled as she fed the letter into a shredder. Hastings still didn't understand. She wasn't trying to be remembered. She was trying to make sure the people he'd erased weren't forgotten. And in that mission, she'd succeeded beyond anything she'd imagined. The Thomas Chen Memorial Foundation had helped expose corruption in 3 other government agencies, resulting in criminal charges against 12 officials. The foundation had also provided legal support and financial assistance to 47 whistleblowers, who might otherwise have been silenced or destroyed. Maya's work at the Department of Justice had helped hundreds of victims navigate the legal system, ensuring their voices were heard and their traumas acknowledged. She'd testified before Congress about the need for stronger whistleblower protections and had helped draft legislation that was currently making its way through committee. And every morning she wore her father's watch, repaired now, finally working, as a reminder that broken things could be fixed if someone cared enough to try. She was having coffee with Reeves at a small cafe near the foundation's office when a young woman approached their table hesitantly. She was maybe 25, nervous, clutching a folder like it was a lifeline. "Excuse me, are you Maya Chen and Colonel Reeves?" "We are," Maya said carefully, aware that recognition came with risks they'd learned to manage. "I'm sorry to bother you, but I didn't know where else to go." The woman's hand shook as she opened the folder. "My brother was in the Marines. He died 3 years ago, officially ruled a training accident, but I found emails on his laptop suggesting it wasn't an accident, that he'd discovered something, tried to report it, and was killed to keep him quiet." Maya and Reeves exchanged glances. They'd heard variations of this story dozens of times in the past year, and everyone still landed like a punch to the gut. "Sit down," Maya said gently, gesturing to an empty chair. "Tell us everything." As the woman began her story, Maya felt the familiar weight of responsibility settling across her shoulders. This was the cost of winning, the knowledge that there were more battles to fight, more truths to uncover, more people who needed help standing up to power. But she also felt something else. Purpose. The kind her father must have felt when he first discovered the conspiracy, when he decided truth mattered more than safety. Thomas Chen had spent his final years afraid and alone, convinced his sacrifice would be meaningless. He died thinking he'd failed. But he hadn't failed. He'd planted seeds that had grown into something larger than one man's investigation. He'd hidden evidence that had brought down a conspiracy. He'd raised a daughter who refused to let powerful people bury the truth. And now that daughter was helping others do the same thing, creating a ripple effect that would outlive them all. Maya listened to the young woman's story, taking notes and asking questions, already planning how the foundation could help. Across the table, Reeves was doing the same, his military training translating civilian distress into actionable intelligence. They would investigate the brother's death. They would gather evidence. They would bring it to Catherine Wright, or one of the other prosecutors they now worked with regularly. And if the evidence supported the sisters' suspicions, they would make sure whoever was responsible faced consequences. It wouldn't be easy. It never was. There would be threats, obstacles, powerful people trying to make the problem disappear. But Maya had learned something in the past year. Power wasn't about position or money or connections. Power was about refusing to be silenced, about standing up even when you were dismissed and ignored, about trusting that the truth, properly documented and courageously defended, could defeat even the most entrenched corruption. Her father had believed that. Reeves had proven it, and Maya was going to spend the rest of her life teaching others the same lesson. The nurse who'd been told she didn't matter, who'd been suspended for trying to save a life, who'd been hunted for refusing to let a patient die, she mattered now. Not because someone in power had decided she did, but because she'd decided it herself. And in a world where people were so often told they were powerless, that small act of self-determination was the most revolutionary thing of all. Maya finished taking notes and looked up at the young woman with a smile that held both empathy and steel. "We'll help you. Whatever it takes, however long it takes, we'll help you find the truth." The woman's relief was palpable, tears streaming down her face as she thanked them over and over. But Maya wasn't doing this for gratitude. She was doing it because somewhere, in whatever came after death, her father was watching. And she wanted him to know that his sacrifice hadn't been in vain, that the watch he'd hidden evidence in was still ticking, that the truth he'd died protecting was still being defended, that he hadn't been forgotten, and he never would be. Outside the cafe window, the city moved on, people rushing to jobs and appointments, living lives that would never know how close they'd come to being casualties of unchecked power. But Maya knew. Reeves knew. The families of Silent Sentinel knew. And they would keep fighting so that others wouldn't have to learn the hard way. The war against corruption would never truly end. But every battle won, every truth exposed, every powerful person held accountable. Those were victories that mattered. Those were the things Thomas Chen had died for. And his daughter would make damn sure those victories kept coming. One fight at a time, one truth at a time, one life saved at a time. Until the system that had tried to erase them learned that some people refuse to disappear. That some mountains, no matter how much shadow passes over them, remain standing. Silent sentinels, watching over those who couldn't watch over themselves. And Maya Chen, formerly dismissed nurse, now champion for the voiceless, would spend the rest of her life proving that even broken things, when properly repaired and wielded with purpose, could change the world. Her father's watch ticked steadily on her wrist, and somewhere, she was certain, Thomas Chen was smiling.